Welcome back to the final UCL Fantasy Deadline stream of the season. This time out of Matchday 17, we are just hours away from the Champions League final between Inter Milan and Paris Saint-Germain. I'll be covering all the lineups, team news, injury updates, the best captaincy options, differentials, so you can win your mini leagues and also rise up those rankings and have kind of a decent sensation about this season by the end of the campaign. So I haven't made any single transfer just yet, but I discussed my plans in my team selection video yesterday, and in my best team podcast, I combined the wildcard and the limitless into one, discussing the ultimate 50-man squad, whether using either chip or just using 5 free transfers. You only need a starting 11, you can't make substitutions or change the captaincy, so you've got one shot at getting it right, and there will be some big calls in terms of, do you go for a back 5, maybe 4 defenders, which is my current plan, or do you go all out on the attack? And there could also be some 50-50 calls from the same team, like Doué or Vitinha from Paris Saint-Germain, or maybe from Inter Milan instead, DeMarco or Bastoni. All of that will be covered in this deadline stream. I'll be answering all your questions. Thank you very much for all your support throughout this season. It is greatly appreciated. And this time last year, I think we had, 10,000 fewer subscribers. So we made a lot of progress after the Euro Fantasy content that I covered last summer, UCL Fantasy this season, and also FPL. And the plan is to do Club World Cup fantasy content as well, because the people have spoken, and I'll keep you updated in due course about the content for that particular platform as well. But let's focus on UCL Fantasy for today, and it's good to see so many familiar faces as well. By the way, for those that are channel members, I have changed the badges. Let me know if you like them. They're actually taken from one of my favorite multiplayer games of all time, and some of them have Roman numerals and stuff like that, but I thought it was something a little bit different. If you don't like it, then we can discuss that as well, but let me know your thoughts on that. And there's also like a new YouTube system, it seems, with the community leaderboard, which you can also see in the live chat. So welcome to Gilberto Rengifo. Nice, you'll be live. See you soon, mate. Yeah, pretty much every single UCL Fantasy and FPL deadline I've covered this season. Even in the last campaign, it's very rare for me to miss one. Even when I'm on holiday, I try my very best to get content out, whether it's a live stream or video. Welcome, Paredes. Always a pleasure to see you, and thank you very much for your contributions towards the channel. Gary says, no last second locking in team, bro. Yeah, I'll be honest, I think the main reason why is because I'm just answering questions and focusing on the live chat. And then I don't give myself enough time to think about my own team, because I'll be honest, I don't think it's great viewing if I'm just, thinking, oh, what do I do? And I'm in silence. So I try to be as interactive as possible, but that could also cost me maybe at times in UCL Fantasy or FPL. But ultimately, I'm to blame, and I do overthink at times, and I try to avoid that for this UCL Fantasy Deadline stream. Kevy says, hey, buddy, how you doing? Looking forward to the game. Will it be the season of underdogs? Well, so far it has been. Europa League final. Maybe not so much Conference League, to be fair, but Champions League could be another one. FA Cup, Crystal Palace beating Man City. So we have seen multiple examples this season. It could be yet another one to add to the list. But I do think PSG Inter Milan is quite balanced. And at the moment, PSG are the narrow favourites, at least in terms of the odds and the clean sheet probabilities and stuff like that. I'll discuss my prediction very soon, though. Gary says French and Italian final in Germany. Interesting. Yeah, that is true. And it's also a refreshing matchup. We have never seen PSG face Inter Milan in their history, only in friendlies over the years. But in terms of competitive games, none whatsoever. So it should be a decent final on paper. I want goals in this one. I think we all do, unless you're a PSG or Inter Milan fan. I think they'll be very nervous, and it could be very cagey. A lot of the recent Champions League finals have been low scoring, a lot of 1-0s in there. Of course, last season was 2-0 Real Madrid. And yeah, I think basically since 2018, that's when we had a lot of goals in that final between Real Madrid and Liverpool. It has been quite a while. Let's see if this season brings us a lot of goals in this final. Welcome, Zodiac, as well. Hey, Dylan and chat. Always a pleasure. Gary says Trent may be joining the Club World Cup in FIFA in the game soon. Yeah, he will do. And I saw a lot of reports over the last couple of months indicating that Real Madrid want him available and ready for that competition. And, they've only won a few Super Cups this season. La Liga was terrible for them. Of course, the Champions League, very disappointing. And Copa del Rey, they lost the final to Barcelona. So I think this will be very important to teams like Real Madrid, who want to kind of set a nice platform for the next campaign as well. And I think Trent will be added to the game very soon, and he will play in the Club World Cup. Easy says only made 3 transfers. Transferred out Yamal, Rafinha, Saliba to Vitinha, Barcola and DeMarco. Yeah, so to be honest with anyone watching, my advice is not to save your transfers until the very end, because you don't want to overthink and do what I do in these streams. But if possible, wait for the lineups and then make your transfers in UCL Fantasy, especially, of course, early in the competition. It's a bit different because sometimes you won't get those lineups for some teams you'll be covering. But of course, at this stage of the competition, you'll have that information. So I'd always encourage you to do that. But either way, all those players you're bringing in should start, and we'll find out very soon. I do have an Inter Milan lineup from Sky Sports Italia, which was published yesterday, and it was confirmed earlier, and we'll get the official announcement very soon. And of course, PSG's lineup will also be covered. There's a few, kind of 50-50 calls, I guess, like cCaFxb, or is it going to be Bargola starting? But some of these players might even make a big difference off the bench, which I talked about in my team selection podcast yesterday. Gary said only needed 2 changes, made 5. Weird flex, but okay. I get that though. You only need a starting 11. The bench is kind of irrelevant, but I'm going to use all my 5 free transfers, to be honest, and try to optimize my team. And then it's all about finalizing a few details. Like I said, the formation is very important. And do I go all in on PSG, Inter Milan, or do a balance, which is something I've done over the years. I have tried different approaches. It can backfire massively no matter what you do. I think for one final, I went all in on Man City against Chelsea. And of course, Chelsea won the Champions League final. Last season, it went in my favour. I went all in on Real Madrid. And I only had a few Borussia Dortmund players like Hummels. And that also worked very well for me. But no matter what you do, you have to start 3 players from the other team. Otherwise, you're down to 10 men. But yeah, that's something that I'll talk about very soon as well, once I finalise my transfers and we also see the lineups. But I'm going to catch up to the chat very soon. Still quite a lot of messages to go through, but I might turn off slow mode since the Champions League final, it should be a bit calmer than the previous deadline streams in UCL Fantasy anyway, but I do appreciate those that have been tuning in anyway. Easy says, my lineup is Donnarumma, Dumfries, Hakimi, Mendes, DeMarco, Dembele, Kvaratskhelia, Calhanoglu, Lautaro, Thuram, and Doué. Okay, so you've gone for that back 4, which I think is pretty solid. So you've gone for 3 midfielders and then 3 forwards. Yeah, I think that's a fairly solid idea. I think there's going to be a lot of different formations flying around, and that's what it ultimately comes down to in terms of winning your mini leagues and rising up the rankings. That could be very crucial in determining if you get a green arrow, a red, and if you're satisfied with Matchday 17. So yeah, the plan, like I said, easy, is to make Club World Cup fantasy content. I'll be honest, towards the end of this season, I have felt maybe a little burnout at times, but I'm just going to speak for myself now in today's stream. I do feel a bit recharged. I've had a few days kind of off. I've only focused on UCL Fantasy, and I've made some Club World Cup fantasy graphics in the background. But yeah, I'll be aiming to do a first draft video, a how to play guide, a chip strategy video, and there could also be the best players in each position, budget players, players to avoid. So basically, stuff that I did last year for Euro Fantasy, I'm going to try to do something similar for the Club World Cup if people want to see it. And if the demand is there, I'll be providing even more content than what people maybe expect. But otherwise, I'll just get the main pieces out, but you'll find out in due course. Danish, welcome to you, and also to Gary. Innocent Bahati says, welcome back for another video. Yes, the last stream of the season, technically, and it should be a good one. Yeah, exactly, Ray. I mean, I'll be honest, I'm just speaking for myself here. I have wanted this season to end for quite some time, especially in the Premier League. I think UCL Fantasy, I've been enjoying it a little bit more, even though it's not my best rank. But yeah, it's still a solid kind of platform overall, and I've been enjoying this competition more so than the Premier League. But yeah, it should be good anyway, and next season could be even better. Richard Millerchip says, hey Dylan, who are your top 3 Inter Milan captains? Yeah, great question. I think Lautaro Martinez would probably be top, Dumfries second, and Calhanoglu third. So the Turkish international is obviously on penalties. He is a great penalty taker, by the way. Lautaro Martinez is Inter Milan's top scorer in the Champions League throughout their history, and Denzel Dumfries can get goals or assists as a defender, and I'm backing a low-scoring game. So you'll see it in Predict 6 very soon, and I might change my scoreline, and I think the lineups will definitely cause a few modifications, but I've currently gone for 1-0 Inter Milan, and I might end up changing it because Dembele is currently my captain as well. And I do think PSG have the better UCL fantasy assets, but Inter Milan also have that experience in this competition. Yeah, exactly that, Ray. That is what I would advise to everyone watching. It'll be the same for everyone, but got to maintain the mini-league run. Well, I've also seen some people discuss, going completely against the template and benching Dembele, for example. And I'm not completely against it, to be fair. But having said that, there is a massive risk involved, and it's either feast or famine. You might get a green arrow from it. Your boldness, ends up paying dividends. But sometimes I've experienced it myself, even in FPL this season, where I kind of go a little bit different. I go really aggressive, and it can backfire massively. So it's a balancing act. You need some luck to go your way if you do that sort of thing. But yeah, I think the template will be fairly strong overall, but the formations will be pivotal. Got to stay under the top 1K globally. Yeah, it's not the easiest of things to do, but it is possible. I obviously did it in the last 2 seasons, or in 2 of the last 3 seasons, and not going to get it this time, unfortunately, but hopefully you do, Ray, and by the end of Matchday 17, we both get green arrows. The same for everybody watching as well. What's with this XP? I haven't done anything there. I think YouTube have just made a few changes since my last deadline stream for FPL, which was already last week. It's crazy how time flies, by the way, but yeah, it's a YouTube thing, which I have nothing to do with. So welcome, Gary, as well. Twill Media says XP is a computer's guess, which nobody refers to afterwards. That might be true. Son says, Forza Ragazzi, number 800 in the world. Well, if you get a green arrow, Inter Milan win the Champions League final, you'll be having a blast, that's for sure. Is Fabian Ruiz captain worth it? I always encourage people to go different in the Champions League final if possible, because otherwise we're all going to have very similar teams. And I think Ruiz, with 1% ownership at the moment, I think that could rise to 5% by the end of this deadline. He's a very good option, even for the captaincy. I'm not going to say he's in my top 3 or 5 on paper, but that doesn't mean he's a bad option. You saw his goal against Arsenal, of real high quality. It came out of nowhere when PSG were under the cosh in the opening minutes of that game. So he does have that ability to score a big goal. And I think Fabian Ruiz is someone I'm definitely considering to buy. Maybe not captaining, but a solid shout nonetheless. Yes, 5 transfers there are. By the way, Yoda, the way you said that message, it's a bit like Yoda. I don't know why I'm saying that, but yeah. Varnett says, hey man, good to see you. It's always a pleasure. And thank you for all the support this season. And also to Julio Bena, who has put a super chat. Hi Dylan, I have 1 starting mid just like you. What do you think about getting 3 mids and benching Doué, or just get 2? What are you leaning towards? So at the moment, I am basically on the same page as yesterday with my team selection podcast, and I'll talk about the graphics very soon. You can see it, right on screen. It makes it very easy to follow. But I am looking at starting 4 defenders, maybe even 5, and the current plan is to bench Doué. Now, it is slightly risky because these forwards like Thuram, Lautaro, and Doué, of course, they will have the best chance of scoring a goal on paper. I think Doué might be 6th in the overall list, which I'll go back to very soon for the goal scorer odds. But yeah, my current plan is to bench Doué and go for more defenders and midfielders. Welcome, Ahmed. Good to see you. And yeah, it's great to see so many members in the chat again. Easy says the Premier League starts in the August 16th. When is the new update for FPL new season? Well, they'll release the game in early July, late June. So I'll be honest, with FPL, I'll focus more on that next month and towards the beginning of July. When the game launches, the content will rack up. But right now, the focus, of course, is UCL Fantasy for today. And afterwards, I can fully focus on Club World Cup Fantasy. And FPL, I think, will be kind of, yeah, we'll take a little break from that. I think we definitely need to recharge the batteries there. Josh says, yo, Dylan, I was going to use 3 transfers on Hakan Çalhanoğlu, Vitinha, and Kvaratskhelia. The other 2 I was debating were Barcola, if he starts, or maybe Barella. Then finally Dumfries or Donnarumma. Any essentials I have missed? Well, assuming you've got the likes of Hakimi, Nuno Mendes, Lautaro Martinez, yeah, you've kind of covered most bases there. Dembele, of course, is template, and I think he's a great option. Another player I like a lot is Bacho for the ball recoveries, and you might even want to go for someone like João Neves in the midfield. With over 80 ball recoveries this season, Marquinhos is another choice in the defensive line with over 100 ball recoveries for the campaign. I think my current prediction is a low-scoring match, so I think ball recoveries could be very important, and a differential like Fabian Ruiz is definitely worth considering. I think that's probably the sort of players I'd be recommending to you. You can't have them all, though, and even if you make 5 free transfers, you have to bench some of these players, and only 11 can start in your team. Only 1 captain. Matchday 17 is its own entity. Thank you, Let's Talk Vinyl. Nice work, Dylan. Best of luck tonight. Likewise to you. Christian Plus United says, going 3-5-2. Interesting. I'm leaning towards a back four at the moment, maybe even a back five, but that is still viable. I'm guessing the five midfielders for you would be Dembele, Vitinha, Kvaratskhelia, Çalhanoğlu, and then you're maybe going for Fabian Ruiz. Even a player like Barella or Mkhitaryan could be decent though, and Barella would be my preference if you want that second Inter Milan midfielder. Yeah, Jamie, I've mentioned that a few times. The plan is to do Club World Cup fantasy content. I have made the graphics and stuff, even some thumbnails and laying foundations there. I've got some notes prepared for the first video, which is the first draft. If the demand is there, I will be making some videos on live streams for that. Now, for match day 1, I think the deadline is at 12 AM UK time on a Saturday, or Sunday, actually. I think I could go live for that, but yeah, with the other deadlines, they are a bit early in the day, which is probably best for me, but it also causes some clashes. I'll try to find a way to work around that, but the plan is to do videos and live streams for Club World Cup Fantasy. Thank you, JW89, I can't read. Hey, Dylan, thanks for your uploads throughout the season. Great UCL Fantasy content, as always. Good luck tonight, and catch you next season. Have a nice summer. Thank you very much for the kind words, and I hope you have a brilliant summer too. Yeah, let's get the Green Arrows today. End UCL Fantasy very strongly, and then recharge the batteries throughout the summer, and then going into next season, do even better. That's the plan. Captain Calfridge says, I'm going to do it for 1 week. What's the best team? Not sure what you're saying in terms of I'm going to do it, but I have made a best team video, and I wouldn't really change too much from it. I might as well go into the other screens and stuff like that, not just showing my ugly team at the moment with all those eliminated players. So first off, let me just promote this UCL Fantasy League. There is a code in the description, and if you type in cCaFxb in the mini league section of your Gaming Hub app or the UCL Fantasy website, you can become a member of the UCL Fantasy Mini League, and you will be here for next season as well, because I will renew it, and that means you will be there for the next campaign, and you don't need to do this again, and we've got thousands of members already. So, of course, you asked about the best team, so let me just get this up on screen. Donnarumma and Sommer, obviously very obvious. It's just about who you start. My current preference is Jan Sommer. I would also go for Dumfries, Nuno Mendes, Bastoni, Hakimi, and Batshuayi, and I would even consider starting all 5 of them and going for a back 5. With the midfield, Çalhanoğlu, Ruiz, Dembele, Kvaratskhelia, and Barella is what I'd currently opt for, and the 3 forwards are kind of template and very obvious. Lautaro Martinez, Thuram, and Doué. You could go for a differential. For example, Taremi, Arnautovic, or Gonzalo Ramos. They could score off the bench and be the hero. If it's a 1-0 and they score the winning goal, they can get the Player of the Match award, the points for scoring, and still get 7-8 points without starting the game. And in the midfield, Barcola is definitely one to look out for. If he starts, I think he's a great option, and I might even buy him over Kvaratskhelia and Fabian Ruiz, but it all depends on those lineups, and I'll cover them very soon, of course. And in terms of my team selection, I'll go back to this very soon. I am looking at one of Vitinha or Fabian Ruiz to come in alongside Kvaratskhelia and Çalhanoğlu in the midfield, and then Batshuayi in the defence and Sommer in goal. But I'm also considering a possibility where I just keep Donnarumma, I don't buy Sommer, and I could make my 5th transfer on the other midfielder, and I could sell Saka to, let's say, for example, Barella, Mkhitaryan, or I could go for yet another PSG player. Of course, with what you see on screen, I would already have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, so that wouldn't be possible. And I think ultimately it probably requires making a big decision and picking one PSG midfielder between Vitinha, Fabian Ruiz, and also João Neves, who is very underrated in my opinion. But let's now go to Predict 6. This is my current prediction. I've gone for 1-0 Inter. I might end up changing this, and the same goes for each individual prediction in terms of who scores first and is there going to be a goal in the second half and yada, yada, yada. But let's cover some Inter Milan news. So Benjamin Pavard is set to reclaim his position in the starting lineup over Bissek in the Champions League final. And this is what Sky Sports Italia have gone for. Sommer in goal, Pavard, Acerbi and Bastoni, Dumfries and DeMarco as the wing-backs, Barella, Çalhanoğlu and Mkhitaryan in the midfield, with Thuram and Lautaro Martinez up front. I also put some polls out on my channel, so pick one goalkeeper for Matchday 17, and Jan Sommer has 60% of the votes, with more saves and more UCL fantasy points than the Italian. I also put Bastoni or Batshuayi. For me, the standout players would be Dumfries, Hakimi and Nuno Mendes in that defensive position. But in terms of the fourth best, it is between these two. Bacho is better for ball recoveries. PSG have the better chance of a clean sheet, which I'll also show you in a few minutes. But Bastoni is a solid option. He also got player of the match in the quarterfinals against Bayern Munich. So one of the best defenders in world football and probably the second best Inter Milan defender, only behind Denzel Dumfries in UCL Fantasy. Next up is the best midfielder, or your favourite, for UCL Fantasy again. Vitinha is top with almost half of the votes. Calhanoglu is second with a quarter of those votes in the poll. And Fabian Ruiz is actually last. Barcola is third, but I think he could be a really good option if he starts against Inter Milan. The final poll is about the captaincy, and Dembele is the most popular option with over half of those votes. Lautaro Martinez is second with 22%, Dumfries is third, and Hakimi is fourth. But I also said to leave your suggestions, any alternative picks, in the comment section. And once PSG's lineup is out, I'll be going through that and Inter Milan's just to see if there are any changes from what I talked about in the Sky Sports Italia section. But let me also talk about my team selection graphics, and I won't really give too much commentary because I did that in my team selection video yesterday. So you can see my Matchday 16 review, how I did, and the way I achieved a small green arrow. It's my worst rank, I believe, that I've ever done, but it's still a solid rank overall in my opinion. Hakimi was my only player of the match award player in the second leg of the semi-finals. I didn't have Jan Sommer there, and I actually sold David Raya to Donnarumma, and that cost me a few points in the end. But overall, still a solid showing. I had not only Hakimi, but also Dumfries getting 2 assists against Barcelona and building upon that great performance in the first leg. Rafinha as my captain delivered, and that was important in securing that green arrow. Saka scored despite missing an open goal against PSG. He has been a man of big moments for Arsenal. And Ousmane Dembele got an assist off the bench against the Gunners, and Lautaro Martinez scored and won a penalty to deliver 8 points against the Catalans. Everyone else blanked in my 15-man squad, but it was still enough to get that green, which is the most important thing. It doesn't matter if you get 50 points, 80, it's all about getting that green arrow. But these are the transfers I'm looking at. Szczesny to Sommer is maybe a luxury transfer, and I could just start Donnarumma instead and avoid Sommer for one more match day. I don't think I've actually owned Sommer this season. I need to double check that, but it seems like it's been ages since I've had Sommer in my UCL fantasy team. But moving on to the other positions, Saliba to Bacho is my top priority, but this could also be Bastoni instead. And I could see myself regretting certain decisions like who I pick between Bacho and Bastoni, and also if I bench DeMarco in the end, because he's got that attacking potential to really make a difference in that Champions League final. But conversely, you've got that minutes risk with the Italian win-back, because in Matchday 16, he only got 55 minutes against Barcelona in that 4-3 win for Inter Milan. So going into the midfield, which is probably the main focus of my transfers, Lamine Yamal to Calhanoglu is a very sensible move. And even if you're backing PSG to win this game, you need to start 3 Inter Milan players. And my advice would be Lautaro Martinez, Dumfries, and Calhanoglu if you need that third outfield player. Otherwise, Jan Sommer is a solid choice between the sticks. But the other midfielder move I'm looking to make, and it really doesn't matter who I sell, to be honest, Ferran Torres out to Vitinha. But I'm also looking at the ownership figures, and Vitinha's isn't too high, but Fabian Ruiz is so appealing with only 1% ownership. And if Barcola starts, which we'll find out in the next 15 to 20 minutes, I'm very tempted to go for Barcola as one of my final transfers of this Champions League campaign. And last but not least is buying Kvaratskhelia for Rafinha. Now, at the time of this recording, the Georgian international has 7% ownership, but I think they'll go to 15% quite easily, if not at least 10%. And it looks like the ownership figures don't update until the deadline has passed, but he's going to be a very popular transfer now for the Champions League final, and I haven't owned him all season. So with those provisional transfers, this is going to be my starting 11, and it's just worth mentioning it's not locked in. There could be 1 or 2 tweaks like Fabian Ruiz instead of Vitinha. Maybe I don't buy Jan Sommer in the end, but as things stand, that is my current plan. And also to go for a back 4 of Hakimi, Bacho, Nuno Mendes and Dumfries, a midfield 4 of Dembele, Kvaratskhelia, Vitinha and Calhanoglu, Lautaro Martinez and Thuram up front, and the bench would include Donnarumma, Doué, DeMarco and Saka, who is eliminated. That could also be Ferran Torres, Yamal or Rafinha. It really doesn't matter. I've got around 8 million in the bank after making these transfers. If I decided to sell another midfielder instead of Saka, I'd have 11 million. It really doesn't matter. Everybody watching can afford this 15-man squad, and even those starting UCL Fantasy now in Matchday 17 can afford every single one of these players. But with the captaincy, Dembele is the top pick in terms of the goal scorer odds, which you'll see very, very soon. And if you are backing a PSG win, I think Dembele is probably the best option on paper. But don't discredit Hakimi or Nuno Mendes. And from Inter Milan, I think Lautaro Martinez, Dumfries and Calhanoglu are the standouts. As good as Jan Sommer is, and he did win player of the match in the second leg against Barcelona, I don't think he will today. Let's see how that ages, of course. He is a man of big moments, but I would probably rather go for a defender, midfielder or forward, to be honest, when it comes to the captaincy. And those are my favourite options from either team when it comes to the armband. So that is it. I might go back to this or just play in the background whilst I answer some questions, but all of this was discussed in a lot of detail in my team selection podcast yesterday. So let's now go to the odds very quickly. So we've only got two teams left, of course. PSG are the narrow favourites with a 32% probability of keeping a clean sheet, and Inter Milan only have a 25% chance, despite conceding fewer goals than PSG. Only one defeat all season in this tournament. I believe it was against Bayer Leverkusen. They lost 1-0. And PSG have lost 5 games. And I'll also compare their stats in the next section. But let's talk about the goal scorer odds first. And you've got Dembele in top spot, Gonzalo Ramos second, Lautaro, Barcola, and Kvaratskhelia in the top 5. But this is based on the assumption that all of these players will start. And that won't be the case. I think Gonzalo Ramos will be on the bench. We've also got Thuram, Doué, Taremi, Kang In Lee, Fratesi, Vitinha, Calhanoglu, Zielinski, Hakimi, and Mkhitaryan in the top 15. I think the likes of Dumfries also share the same figure as Mkhitaryan at 11% chance of scoring a goal. And there's a few other decent UCL fantasy options. I think Vitinha might be another one. Not Vitinha, actually. It's Fabian Ruiz, who has 11% chance of scoring, according to fantasyfootballpundit.com. But let's actually move on to the fixtures section, where I've got some different graphics here on screen. And this illustrates the point I made earlier about the recent Champions League finals being so low scoring. So last season, we got Real Madrid 2, Borussia Dortmund 0, Man City 1, Inter Milan 0, Real Madrid 1, Liverpool 0, Chelsea 1, Man City 0, Bayern Munich 1, PSG 0, Liverpool 2, Tottenham 0. And then, if you look in the previous years, there you have a few high scoring games like Real Madrid 3, Liverpool 1, Real Madrid 4, Juventus 1, and also Real Madrid winning on penalties against Atletico Madrid, Barcelona 3, Juventus 1, and Real Madrid 4, Atletico Madrid 1. That was in extra time. Don't be caught off, by the way, about the teams on the left winning the Champions League, because that's how UEFA ordered this graphic. There have been some home teams, so to speak, who have lost the Champions League final. Tottenham Hotspur were one of them back in 2019, and technically Inter Milan would be the away side this time round. So that gives PSG a small advantage, if anything. It really doesn't matter, I think. But yeah, typically the home team does win the Champions League final, but not always. Let's move on to the next few graphics. So, of course, we've got the two finalists, Inter Milan and PSG. One of the big debates will be Sommer or Donnarumma, but as evidenced in the poll earlier, Sommer is the preference of the UCL fantasy community, and I do agree with the vast majority of you. But if you are backing PSG to win or keep a clean sheet, then I think keeping the Italian is absolutely fine. Let's also talk about a few other things like the route to the final. So PSG won 4 games, drew 1 and lost 3 in the league phase. They finished 15th, so it was a pretty average campaign there. But they have stepped up in the knockouts, despite losing 2 games there against Liverpool and Aston Villa. They beat Brest 10-0 on aggregate. They also beat Liverpool at Anfield and won on penalties there. They beat Aston Villa only just, and they also got the better of Arsenal across both legs, despite maybe conceding a lot of big chances as well. But they got the job done, and PSG are seen as the best team in Europe this season by many pundits and outlets. But with Inter Milan, they've only lost 1 game this season in the Champions League, with 6 wins, 1 draw, and 1 loss in the league phase, finishing 4th, scoring 11 goals and conceding once. But in the knockout stages, only 1 clean sheet, which was back in Matchday 11, the last one they've kept in this competition. They also beat Feyenoord 2-1 at home, and they got the job done there. They also beat Bayern Munich and Barcelona to reach this Champions League final. They also got to this stage a few years ago, and they just about missed out against Man City. They missed some big chances there in Matchday 13 at the time, of course, which I also covered on this channel a few years ago. But PSG are another team that have reached the Champions League final recently and only just missed out by a 1-0 deficit. But speaking of which, Inter Milan have only been behind in 17 minutes of this Champions League campaign in 14 matches. That's really impressive. It goes to show how solid they are defensively. Despite all the goals they conceded to Barcelona, they were able to find a way, and they were 2-0 up across both legs very early on. So they are fast starters. Let's see if they can do that once more. And in terms of team news, everyone is available for both Inter Milan and PSG. There are no suspensions, and both lineups will be covered very soon. Now, comparing both of these teams in the Champions League head-to-head, you can see that Inter Milan have the more impressive record in terms of wins and losses. The same goes for goals conceded and clean sheets, but PSG have scored more goals with 33, and they also played in the knockout playoff rounds. That's why they've got extra games compared to Inter Milan. And in terms of passes completed and possession, then that will be in PSG's favour as well. But Inter Milan can adapt, and they're very versatile defensively, and I think Inzaghi is a very good tactician. It should be a great matchup. Of course, Luis Enrique is a great coach himself, and it should be a fantastic final. Hopefully we do get that, and not a bore fest with a 0-0 or just a really drab affair, which we have seen in some recent UCL finals too. Let's go back now to my UCL fantasy team for now, and afterwards we'll cover those eagerly anticipated lineups for the Champions League finalists, and also going through your questions. Like I said before, let me know if you like the new badges for channel members, which come from a popular, maybe not popular, but a very underrated multiplayer game that I used to play back in the day. If Inter win, they may rotate in the Club World Cup, says Gary. That is possible. I do have 1 or 2 players maybe from Inter Milan, but I'll talk about that very soon. So yeah, Richard, nothing's really changed. I think the best defenders from Inter Milan would be Dumfries first, Bastoni second, and Pavard third. So yeah, my current prediction is 1-0 Inter Milan. I may change that though, and I currently have Dembele captain, so I'm kind of hoping I hit something, either the prediction or UCL Fantasy, and getting some points in the process. But that's just something I felt from the get-go. You know, just a narrow win there for PSG. Oh my god. Yeah. FPL manager says going for Barcola, Kvaratskhelia, Vitinha, Calhanoglu, Dembele. Is it stupid to go for 5 minutes? It's not stupid. There are different ways of playing it, and my advice is to go for your own sort of path, because otherwise we're all going to have very similar teams at this stage of the competition. I'm looking at a back 4, maybe even a back 5, and going for 5 midfielders isn't a bad idea. To be honest, I think you could even argue they're more appealing than the forwards this week. PSG 2, Inter 2. PSG to win on penalties 4-3 says easy. Innocent Bahati says Club World Cup fantasy content, please. That's been covered before. The plan is to make content there, but yeah, it will be a big ask in June, but I will do my best to get the content out there. Jerome says, hola, hoy la banca no suma puntos, ¿correcto? Sí, es verdad. En la jornada 17 no puedes hacer sustituciones y no puedes cambiar el capitán tampoco. Así que todo depende de tu 11 inicial y un capitán nada más. No puedes cambiarlo, así que es muy importante tener todo en orden. Adil says, evening Dylan, I'm never in your UCL streams, but saw you were live and just thought I'd quickly say hello. I appreciate it, and yeah, I think you probably picked a good time, because especially the earlier UCL Fantasy Deadline streams, they are very hectic to say the least, and it's hard to get a word in sometimes. That's what people tell me anyway. Flash scores have the lineup. Yeah, but does it say predicted or does it say official? So yeah, on UEFA's website, it doesn't show PSG's lineup just yet. Once they do, I'll just use that website to show both of them simultaneously. But I'll quickly check PSG's page as well. If you haven't already, drop a like, subscribe to the channel, and also share this content around with those that like UCL Fantasy, FPL, and Club World Cup Fantasy, which is proven to be even more popular than a lot of us anticipated. But it looks like PSG haven't released their lineup just yet, and technically Inter Milan haven't either, but we did get that Sky Sports Italia prediction, and they are very reliable when it comes to that. What about the Inter versus City final? What, is it not in that graphic? I'm pretty sure it is. I'll double check, but yeah, I'm pretty sure it is there. Let me actually have a look. Yeah, it was covered. Yeah. It was in that graphic. Man City won, Inter Milan 0 the season before last. I did cover it on this channel. I was making videos, well, I have been making it for the last 4 or 5 years with UCL Fantasy. The FF, or the F Frostbite says, have a feeling it will be a game where both teams score. Also might punt on Fratesi, has a good record off the bench and his whole game is about getting in the box. I honestly don't mind that. A differential like Fratesi can make all the difference. I mean, who would have expected him to be the game winner against Barcelona? And yeah, I can see why you think that, to be honest. I mean, I went for a 1-0, and that's not necessarily locked in. I might end up going for a 2-1 either way, which is kind of a generic scoreline, but a lot of the recent friendlies between both of these teams have been a 2-1 scoreline either way. Thank you, Innocent. You've been so resourceful this season, mate. Thank you so much. I appreciate the kind words, and hopefully I can give some good advice for the final match day of the season so people don't remember the bad by the end of the campaign. JDub89 says, of course, Club World Cup. In that case, I'll catch you for those too. Yeah, it should be a good one. Something a little bit different. There are some interesting rules in there. There are maybe a few flaws which we can also talk about, but I'll focus on breaking it down for those that are completely new to fantasy games in general, and especially Club World Cup. But I'm almost well-versed already. I've been doing a lot of research, especially when it comes to players and teams, and all of my picks at the moment in my first draft have been thoroughly analysed, and I'll talk about that in an upcoming video. Easy says, also World Cup next year. There is no break, basically, isn't there? I was actually looking at this summer as potentially one to recharge the batteries fully and just build the foundations for UCL Fantasy and FPL next season. And that could still be the case, by the way. But yeah, Club World Cup Fantasy is being, well, it's just a popular demand by people, and I get it. Best differential captain, says Jack. Good question. Differential captain. I still think a defender like Dumfries or Nuno Mendes could be a differential captain, so they would be up there for me. Otherwise, you're looking at Fabian Ruiz or Calhanoglu, to be fair. Ignacio says, Grande Dylan, tengo 8 puntos de ventaja en una liga privada. ¿Con qué irías? ¿Con Dembele, Capitán o Hakimi? Gran temporada, mate. Thanks, like always. Muchas gracias, Ignacio. Para mí es mejor ir con Dembele, pero no me molesta Hakimi porque tiene la potencial de anotar un gol, hacer una asistencia y también la valla invicta, recuperar el balón, así que es una buena opción. Está en los primeros 3 o 5 en términos de la capitán, pero yo prefiero Dembele en este momento. Patrick McCall says 1,137 points, 63k in the world, good rank, and I think before this season it was very difficult to get to over 1,000 points, but with the extended format, and we have seen some high scoring match days this season, that has helped a lot of us get over that mark. So it's the first time we've basically reached quadruple digits, you could say, or 4 digits in terms of score. Luca de Gabriel says, Limitless has been active. Let me know who starts and who doesn't so that I can lock in my Limitless team. I saw Doué won't start though. That's interesting. And if that's the case, I think Barcola would take his place, and I'd be very tempted to go for Barcola. I think he scored a brace in the Coupe de France final. He also got an assist, but Doué started that game as well on the right, and he got 2 assists himself. So yeah, they're all good options. It could be a case where Doué's benched, you bench him in your UCL Fantasy team, you go for Barcola, he ends up blanking, and Doué scores off the bench. That can happen in the Champions League, but I'll cover those lineups very soon. Yeah, Onesie Celsius, the plan is to do it. Club World Cup Fantasy content, because the people have spoken. I might not be able to do as much content as I did for the Euro Fantasy last season, but maybe I'll surprise myself and get a lot of videos and streams out there for you. But I'll try to get the main pieces out for the viewers so you can be well informed for Club World Cup Fantasy, and you can have a great platform to do really well in yet another fantasy game. Henry Lopez says, Hermano, gracias por tu ayuda esta temporada. Saludos de México y next year vamos City. Gracias, Henry. No estoy de acuerdo con la última frase, pero muchas gracias y ojalá que podamos hablar en el Club World Cup o si no en FPL en la siguiente temporada. Tachion says, Hi Dylan, I reached 1.4k world rank, 107th in your league. Highest rank in Champions League ever. Should I risk adding a couple of punty players? If so, who would you recommend? So this is a commonly asked question in terms of FPL and UCL Fantasy. I'm doing really well. Should I go aggressive, or should I kind of go a bit template and cover my rank? I think you need to keep on doing what you've been doing all season and don't suddenly change your approach just because of where you are now. I know that might seem like not the best of advice, but that's something that I've found over the years where sometimes people go against what they've done to bring him to such a high rank by the end of the season, and then it kind of cost him towards the end. So look, in my opinion, it's nice having a balance. So you can cover the template picks like Dembele, Hakimi, and maybe captain one of them, but you can also buy a differential like Fabian Ruiz, and that can be your difference maker. But what's the most important, I think, for the Champions League final is your choice of formation. Are you backing a low-scoring game? If so, go for a back four or a back five. Otherwise, you might think both teams will score. You can just stick with 3 defenders in that sort of scenario and go all out on the attack. But my current preference is to have 4 defenders at the very least. Beardy says, hi Dylan, I don't play UCL Fantasy here due to FPL withdrawal. Fair enough, Beardy. It's always good to see you, and maybe check out UCL Fantasy for next season because it can be a lot of fun. Yeah, I'll be honest with FPL, I'm kind of glad that's over. I haven't even checked my rank. I don't know how I did in Game Week 38, but I think it was pretty terrible in the end. But yeah, I'll be covering it next season, and the same goes for UCL Fantasy. And let me know if you're doing Club World Cup Fantasy as well. Josh says, thanks Dylan for your help. Can't wait for the Club World Cup. Best of luck tonight. I'm trying to catch you up. I'm a few points behind. Well, all the best in getting the rank you want. But yeah, it'll be an interesting time. Matchday 17 will decide everything in terms of rank, mini league position, and all of that. But it can be very competitive, especially in this game. User69 says, thanks Dylan for the help in FPL. Won my mini league with that Bowen captain. I was so close to doing that myself, and that actually would have made me have a pretty good week in the end, I think. But yeah, I'm glad to hear that you did well. FPL, yeah, the less said about that, the better. Rose's K says, just saying hi, love my team, top of some of my mini leagues till next season. Well, why not make it top of all your mini leagues? It might be difficult, but still possible. Ahmed says, my squad is Donnarumma, Hakimi, Nuno, Bastoni, DeMarco, Dumfries, Dembele, Doué, Martinez, Thuram, and 5 transfers. What is your advice? Whom to get? So we'll check out the Doué news if he's going to be benched or if he starts. And I think the lineups might be out now, so I'll have a check in just a minute or two. But with your team, I'd be adding more midfielders. Kalanoglu would be a standout. I also would be looking at Kvaratskhelia and one of Fabian Ruiz or Vitinha. In your defensive line, you've basically got most of the good options except Bacho. So that's another option you could actually add to your ranks. But basically those players I've mentioned are some you really want to consider. And if Barcola starts, I'd be very tempted to go for him. But let's see now if PSG's lineup is out. It should be, I think. And yes, it is. We do have the lineups on UEFA's website. We'll be going through that now. And also avoiding any copyrights because UEFA love playing these pop-out videos. So, you can't see the formation just yet. But for PSG, Donnarumma, Hakimi, Marquinhos, Kvaratskhelia, Fabian Ruiz, Dembele, Doué, Vitinha, Nuno Mendes, Bacho, and João Neves. So, Barcola is on the bench. It's basically an unchanged side from the starting lineup against Arsenal in the first leg because Dembele does come back into the fold now. But yeah, that's pretty much what you would have expected. One of the only doubts would have been Barcola or Doué, maybe even Kvaratskhelia, but that is pretty much as is. And for Inter Milan, Sommer, Dumfries, Thuram, Lautaro Martinez, Acerbi, Kalanoglu, Mkhitaryan, Barella, Pavard, DeMarco, and Bastoni. So that's exactly what Sky Sports Italia said in the post yesterday, which I also relayed to you earlier in this stream. So no surprises there. Inter Milan going for their usual formation and starting lineup. Let's also look at the bench. Maybe some of these players will be the difference makers. So for PSG, there is Safonov, Tenas, Kimpembe, Gonzalo Ramos, Kang-in Lee, Lucas Hernandez, Mayulu, Barcola, Zaire Emery, Lucas Beraldo, and Mbaye. For Inter Milan, there's Di Gennaro, Joseph Martinez, De Vrij, Zielinski, Arnautovic, Fratesi, Aslani, Carlos Augusto, Bisek, Darmian, Zalewski, and Taremi. So you can see the lineups now in terms of formation. So PSG with their 4-3-3 and Inter Milan with a 3-4-3 technically. It does kind of show up as a 3-5-2 here. It depends how you look at it, really. Yeah, I think 3-5-2 actually. I'm kind of bugging out. They don't play with 2 wingers. It is a 3-5-2. Yeah, so pretty much no surprises from either lineup. And Barcola could still be a difference maker off the bench, but I'm less inclined to buy him now with Doué starting instead. So now it just comes down to the final details. Do we start Doué or maybe go for a back 4 or a back 5? That's what I'll decide in the next hour or so, but it gives us plenty of time to reflect and finalize a few details with the captaincy differentials and our final transfers. So I'm going to go back to my UCL Fantasy team for now, and very shortly I'll be making some moves myself. But yeah, thank you to those in the chat that probably also said, oh yeah, the laps are out, by the way. I appreciate it. But yeah, that is all covered. I also need to lock in my Predict 6 prediction. Maybe I'll change that 1-0 Inter Milan to something else. Captain Calfridge says, thanks, have a good week. So a 5-3-2 and start, I don't know who in the midfield. It would be Dembele, Çalhanoğlu, and then it's very difficult to choose that third midfielder because I think you've got plenty of options there. But I'd probably opt for one of Kvaratskhelia, Fabian Ruiz, or Vitinha. My favourite at the moment would be Kvaratskhelia. But for sure, the two standout midfielders would be Dembele and Çalhanoğlu. Gary says, it's summertime. That's fair enough. Twisted Parky says, I nearly forgot. I don't really blame you. If I didn't make videos, I probably would have forgotten a few of these deadlines for UCL Fantasy and FPL. So yeah, Amelia, I have made a video on this in terms of the best team with the Limitless or Wildcard. Both chips are the exact same at this point. You're going to have so much money in the bank. So the Limitless is less effective now, to be quite honest with you. But essentially, it's going to be something like this. If we go to the transfer section here, my transfers will kind of match most Limitless and Wildcard teams. So essentially, you'd have this sort of platform. You can have 8 PSG or 8 Inter. Either way, that's pretty much all you can do. That's the limit for players per club. So you'd have to start 3 players from the other team regardless. And if you are going all in on PSG, my advice in terms of covering Inter Milan will be Lautaro Martinez, Dumfries, and then one of Sommer or Çalhanoğlu. And for PSG, if you're going all in on Inter Milan, the 3 standout Parisian picks would be Dembele, Hakimi, and Nuno Mendes, in my opinion. But in terms of the starting 11, it'd still be Sommer in goal for me. I would consider going for a back 5, but if not, maybe 4 is enough, and you bench Bastoni. I would go for Çalhanoğlu, Dembele, Kvaratskhelia, and I think Fabian Ruiz. This could also be Vitinha, by the way. I would always encourage you to go a little bit different in certain picks if you feel like you can gain a few points over your competitors. Up front, I'd probably bench Doué at the moment, but that is something I could end up regretting, to be fair. So essentially, a 4-4-2, starting Thuram and Lautaro Martinez, a midfield 4 of Çalhanoğlu, Ruiz, Kvaratskhelia, and Dembele, and then 4 defenders, but you could easily make that 5 and go for Bastoni in your lineup and Jan Sommer in goal. But a lot depends on your predictions. You might think PSG keep a clean sheet. If that's the case, then just go for Donnarumma over Sommer in your situation. But my preference in isolation would be the Swiss shot stopper instead. Dylan's team will be locked in 7:59 PM. Hopefully not, mate. A little bit earlier than that. I'll try to make that a mission of mine. Path says, hi, Dylan. Which captain is better, Dembele or Martinez? My current preference is Dembele, even though I've technically favoured Inter Milan a little bit more for the win. But yeah, Dembele is probably the best captain on paper, in my opinion. Looks like my Liverpool versus Benfica final prediction isn't going to happen. Oh yeah, that was some time ago that you said that. I mean, Liverpool, to be fair, you would have expected them to go a bit further, but they came against a pretty decent PSG team. Easy says the winner of this final qualifies for the 2029 Club World Cup. Yeah. We'll see who that is. Of course, both of them are in the Club World Cup this year anyway. I think Donnarumma is more of a big game keeper. You might be right. I mean, Donnarumma was the hero in the Euros final against England. He also made the difference against Liverpool in the penalty shootout, but what about Jan Sommer? Man of the match against Barcelona in a 4-3 win. Also against France, he was the hero in the penalty shootout, saving Mbappe's penalty. I think they're both big game goalkeepers, but I get your point. Easy says the second team after is that Hilal from Saudi Arabia, who wins the Asian Champions League. By score prediction 3-2 PSG, says Captain. Interesting. If it was that high scoring, that would be pretty interesting. Yep, Go M, exactly that. Doué does start. Let's whiz through these since there are a lot of messages still to go through. Diego Tenorio says, what do you think about a full PSG or Inter 11? Well, you technically can't do that, mate. You can only go for 8 players from one team. But I just covered that a few minutes ago in terms of if you go all in on Inter Milan, I highlight the 3 PSG players I'd recommend starting, and vice versa if you are kind of in the camp of PSG winning the Champions League final, or you just prefer their assets in general. Ignacio says, Grande Dylan, Gran Caesar mate, a ver qué opinas. Dudo entre Dembele o Hakimi capitán. Tengo que una ventaja de 8 puntos. Sí, para mí Dembélé capitán es mejor, como dije antes. ¿Y qué alineación ves mejor? Yo iré con un 4-4-2. Sí, es algo que recién hablé cuando alguien me preguntó de el mejor equipo con el Limitless o Wildcard. Sí, un 5-3-2 o sí, 4-4-2 para mí es el mejor. Attacking defenders are top for points return. Yes, DeMarco is an interesting one though, because his minutes are a big concern. He could be subbed off before 60 minutes, and that would be just a major blow, because with a clean sheet as well, even if Inter Milan concede later in the game, it's always nice to kind of bank those clean sheet points after 60 plus. But if DeMarco subbed off earlier, you could just be looking at a 1 or 2 pointer. Miss Hallen says Inter are much more experienced, have the know-how to grind these tough victories. They showed against Barcelona. They won in a different way to what you would have expected, because they usually are solid defensively, but they showed a different way to win. So you might be right. I think Inter Milan personally are a little bit more likely to win this Champions League final. That is my kind of feeling. Maybe I'm wrong about it, but it's something I felt over the last couple of weeks. Do I feel confident enough to go all in on Inter Milan? Not really. And in UCL Fantasy, I think PSG have better options in general. I know Calhanoglu, Lautaro, Dumfries, and Sommer would, be very good options. But apart from that, I struggle to find really good Inter Milan options in UCL Fantasy. Bastoni's decent, DeMarco as well on his day, but I think PSG have better options in UCL Fantasy. Gil Barrios says, it's a madness to go with 5 defenders. No, I don't think so. 3 PSG and 2 Inter. It's something I discussed in my best team video the other day. I think it's a very solid strategy. And last season, I went for a back 5, I think, if I remember correctly, and it worked very well. I tripled up on Real Madrid defensively. They kept the clean sheet against Borussia Dortmund, so it's a very solid play. Sebastián García says, no sabías que podías hablar español también. The GOAT. Thank you very much. Sí, mi familia es de Argentina, pero te digo la verdad, yo hablo inglés mucho mejor. Me cuesta a veces como pensar en qué voy a decir en español, pero zafa, digamos. Just the Parky says, thoughts on maybe getting Sane? I don't want him. I think I was asked this in an FPL stream a long time ago by somebody else, and I'll say the same thing. I don't want Sane. We saw it with Sterling this season. I know Sane is at a better level, but I'd rather get the next Sane rather than buying, I wouldn't say a wash version, but he's approaching the end of his kind of peak. I think he's already kind of gone past that as well. Funny how Prem champs are not in the Club World Cup. Yeah, I'm a bit surprised about Liverpool not being in it, but I'm guessing, yes, basically the last 4 or 5 years, right, of Club World Cup winners, and Liverpool were 6 years ago. But you do have some finalists like Inter Milan and PSG, who haven't won it yet, who are in this year's competition. Wasn't going to do the Club World Cup, but if you are, I will. I'm glad to hear that, Twisted Parky. Thank you very much. Yeah, I'll be honest, I was kind of looking forward to taking a break, but it is still fun getting some content out there and also preventing me getting rusty in front of the camera and the mic. So we'll see how that goes. Miss Hallen says, who do you think could be the most important player for PSG? Yeah, I think Bacho is a very good ball recoverer. Marquinhos. There have been times where he has, maybe being a letdown is a bit harsh, but I'll be honest, I rated Marquinhos a lot a few years ago. I've kind of maybe lost a little bit of that kind of, how do I say, high opinion of him, but he's a good player. I think the kind of key players will be in the midfield. I think that is such an important component. So whether it's Vitinha or Calhanoglu, whoever wins that midfield battle, I think could end up leading their team to winning the Champions League final. So I think it's the midfield for me. Francesco Ramos says, wish me luck. Estoy en el lugar 407 del mundo y quinto en México. Very good rank there. Buena suerte. Going for 2k points, finish in UCL final game, says Gary. 2k points. Wow, I mean, that's a lot. Goal M says 4-3-3 PSG. Exactly that. And Inter Milan are going for a 3-5-2. FPL Manager says, to add to my question about 5 mids, I thought about going for 3 defenders, 5 mids and 2 forwards. Yeah, that's a solid strategy. I'd maybe consider going for an extra defender, like Bacho for ball recoveries, or one of the wing backs like Dumfries, Hakimi or Nuno Mendes for just everything they offer. So my favourite would be 4 defenders, maybe even 5. But I think your formation is still sound. So at the moment, Senator, I've gone for a 1-0 Inter, but I might end up changing it, to be fair. Easy says, there are news that only 2 clubs per nation, City and Chelsea, win the Champions League. That's why Liverpool not qualified. Yeah, that's true. But then you've got teams like PSG who haven't won the Champions League yet. Maybe they do after tonight. And of course, Inter Milan haven't won it in the last 4 years. But I get your point. England have had more success than those 2 countries in the Champions League recently. And of course, Spain always have success in that competition. O. Shankly says, thanks Dylan for your great FPL and Champions League content throughout the season. Looking forward to Club World Cup Fantasy. Thank you very much, and I wish you all the best for Matchday 17. Enjoy the final, and we'll see where we're at by the end of tonight. 2 minutes into the lineup. Yeah, I'm really far behind, aren't I, with these messages. I know, but I'm trying to get through everything. Rank 892, thanks for the tips. Really good rank. Hopefully you can get a green arrow and achieve your best ever position, potentially. Ezra says Hakan or Barella. And another question in regards to PSG. So I would say Çalhanoğlu and Kvaratskhelia. I'm more conflicted about the PSG one, but yeah, Çalhanoğlu is my favourite Inter Milan midfielder. Gary says I'm addicted to fantasy football games. I get that. Now, yeah, some people said withdrawal from FPL in this stream. I'm not really feeling it myself personally, but the fact I'm still playing UCL Fantasy, making videos, and then Club World Cup Fantasy, the same thing. Maybe I've also got a problem myself. GJM says, ¿Cuál sería tu equipo seguro para asegurar el primer lugar de mi mini league? Para mí, Sommer es el mejor arquero, pero es muy cercano entre él y Donnarumma. Yo iría por 4 defensores y hasta 5 está bien. Pero Hakimi, Nuno Mendes, Dumfries y Pacho están muy bien. En el mediocampo, Çalhanoğlu, Dembele, Kvaratskhelia y quizás Fabian Ruiz es mi favorito o mis favoritos en el mediocampo. Y es muy difícil con el ataque, pero Lautaro Martínez está en ese equipo y después está entre Doué y Thuram. Y yo dije toda la semana Thuram es una preferencia muy pequeña sobre Doué, pero no estoy convencido de eso, digo la verdad, pero en este momento yo iría por Thuram y es una decisión que tengo que tomar yo mismo para mi equipo y asegurar primera posición en mi mini league y también para obtener un green arrow también. MMK says, hey Dylan, what do you think of Fratesi differential? Well, he's on the bench, but could he make an impact as a substitute? Absolutely, he did it against Barcelona, so it's definitely a sound strategy. I've seen this question, TZM, and I will cover this in my Club World Cup Fantasy content. So the FIFA app is where you can find that game. If not, just type in on your browser, just go on the FIFA website and then go to the Play Zone section. So it's exactly like the World Cup, which you'll get next year as well. You will find it in the same app and the same sort of page and section as you would have for the World Cup. Kevy says, I have either Doué or Bastoni to start. Think I'll go with Doué, hoping for some goals. Yeah, it's a good question, and I'm also in a similar boat. I think that sort of dilemma could be very crucial in determining whether you get a green arrow, if you win your mini league and stuff like that. So I'm not trying to make people overthink it, but it doesn't seem like a big decision, but it could end up resulting in a massive swing. If you are backing both teams to score or for PSG to win and stuff like that, I think Doué is a sensible choice. Who takes corners for Inter Milan? Çalhanoğlu, if I'm not mistaken. I'm pretty sure Çalhanoğlu takes set pieces. If there is anyone in the chat, you can also correct me there. I'll have a double check just to confirm as well. So, oh my god, that's kind of woke. There's an entire page dedicated to this. Yeah, so Çalhanoğlu, DeMarco, and Aslani take the corners. I think that's pretty much the order as well, but Çalhanoğlu is the main one. The same goes for free kicks as well. So let's see, Çalhanoğlu top and DeMarco. So yeah, those two are the main ones to look out for. I like DeMarco as a UCL fantasy option, but having said that, there is the issue of minutes as well, which can make him a frustrating UCL fantasy asset. So thank you to those that have tuned in. We still have a decent number watching the final UCL Fantasy Deadline stream of the season. Let's get this to over 200 likes, though, to wrap up this campaign in style. And afterwards, the focus will shift towards Club World Cup Fantasy. And then afterwards, it's back to FPL, as always. Nick N says, should I select a full 15 players team or just 11 is enough? 11 is enough, Nick, but if you've got 5 free transfers, I mean, having that option is still decent because you might have a late change of heart and then make a substitution before the deadline. So I'd recommend just making all the transfers and buying your favourite players in each position. But it's not as easy as it sounds, unfortunately. Doué or not Doué? That is the question. It's a very big one, Gary. I could see that being one of my possible regrets either way, whether I start him or not. 15 days after Club World Cup Fantasy, I will make transfers when the real transfer window closes in the 10th of June. Yes, there is going to be that difference in the transfer market as well. That's where we're also seeing a lot of early business being done by Liverpool, Real Madrid, even Arsenal potentially. Donnarumma will have his best game of his career, multiple saves in 120 minutes. We'll wait and see. Maybe you're right. Yeah, Vitinha's a good option, Yarne, but yes, between him or Fabian Ruiz for me. I think Kvaratskhelia is my favourite PSG midfielder to buy, and couple alongside Dembele, and I'm pretty set on buying Calhanoglu as well. Why Fabian Ruiz instead of Vitinha? I'd say he's got a better chance of scoring. I don't think the goal scorer odds would suggest that, but we saw a fantastic goal by Fabian Ruiz in the second leg against Arsenal, and he's also got lower ownership. That's the main reason why I would go for Fabian Ruiz over Vitinha if I end up making that sort of differential call. Liad Ellenson says pick 2 players to start out of Thuram, Bastoni and DeMarco. It's a tough question. I would potentially bench DeMarco simply because the minutes are a concern. I think he will be subbed off between 55 and 65, 70 minutes. If it's before 60, yeah, you're kind of in trouble there and you're limited to the 1 or 2 points potentially. Del Bosque says, Hola Dylan, ¿qué opinas de mi equipo? Okay, so Martinez, Thuram, Dembele, Kvaratskhelia, Hakan, Vitinha, Nuno Mendes, Pacho, Dumfries, Hakimi, Donnarumma. ¿Qué piensas? Grande Dylan. Gracias. Sí, me gusta tu equipo. Está bien. Así que 2 delanteros, 4 mediocampistas y 4 defensores. Algo que estoy pensando yo para mi equipo también. Donnarumma sobre Sommer es interesante. Para mí no es una mala idea. Entonces parece que estás apoyando una victoria de Paris Saint-Germain. Sí, es un buen equipo, pero si tu predicción es una victoria de Paris Saint-Germain, quizás puedes ir por Doué sobre Thuram como un cambio posible ahí, pero está bien tu equipo, me gusta. Gary says 6 PSG and 5 Inter. It's very balanced, isn't it? Now, there's always that kind of question for the Champions League final. Do we go all in on one team and go for 8 players from PSG and 3 from Inter, or vice versa? Or should we balance it, like you say? There is no one set formula, and I think every Champions League final is different. But typically, I think going all in on one team and getting it right, of course, yeah, that is pretty much what leads to the biggest rank rises. So if you are very bullish on one team winning, I would suggest going for at least 7 or 8 players from that team in your 11. Lucas says, in your opinion, would you chase rank and go for Fabian Ruiz or keep the rank and go for Vitinha? I'd lean towards going for Fabian Ruiz and chasing rank, but it all depends on your position. And if you're happy with it, then maybe that isn't the right answer for you. Yeah, I agree, Twisted Parky. I mean, Sterling, he scored once for Arsenal and I went to the stadium, so I feel quite privileged. I also saw Sonogo score in a stadium as well. Ricardo Raposo says 3-4-3 or 3-5-2. I'd say 3-4-3. But I'll be honest, yeah, 3-5-2 isn't too bad because you can then go for Calhanoglu, Dembele, Kvaratskhelia, Fabian Ruiz and Vitinha. I'll be honest though, I think a 4th defender is very enticing to me personally. Because even if there is no clean sheet, you've got ball recoverers like William Bacho, you've got the attacking potential from Dumfries, Hakimi and Nuno Mendes as well. So yeah, I'll cover that very soon, Ranix. My current plan, and this could definitely change in the next 52 minutes, is to buy Sommer in goal, and then I'd start him obviously. Buy William Bacho and go for a back 4 or 5. And if I were to bench one defender, it would be DeMarco. Obviously, Saka is on the bench. And then it comes down to the midfield and forward line. And at the moment, I would actually consider benching Vitinha, which could be a mistake, to be fair. And maybe I don't even buy Vitinha. Maybe I'll buy Fabian Ruiz, to be honest. That's something I'm also going to think about as well. But yeah, I'm quite set on benching Saka, DeMarco, and then it comes down to that other option, either Doué, Thuram, or that other PSG midfielder. They would be on the bench in the end. So I'll cover that very soon. But yeah, at the moment, I'm leaning towards what I talked about in my team selection podcast yesterday. Raul says, have transfers left. Should I go from DeMarco to buy a secure Inter defender? It's not a bad strategy. Now, DeMarco is on some set pieces, so you will miss that and the attacking potential. But Yeah, Bastoni is my second favorite Inter Milan defender. Pavard is third, and I think DeMarco would be fourth. So I get that. If you don't have Dumfries, by the way, I'd definitely make that move. Ivan says, who to transfer in, Doué, Mkhitaryan, Barella, or Fabian Ruiz? For me, it's between Fabian Ruiz or Doué. That is what I'd lean towards and hone in on. I'm not fully set yet on who I'm going to start, and I might not even buy Fabian Ruiz in the end. It's between him and Vitinha, I think. And if I end up buying one of them, I need to decide if I bench him, that midfielder, or Doué. But yeah, Mkhitaryan or Barella would be slightly lower down in that pecking order. Serbi or Bastoni? Bastoni for me. To be fair, Serbi's quite underrated. He's a good option, but I prefer Bastoni. Captain Calfridge says, I did Donnarumma, Bastoni, Dumfries, Nuno Mendes, Hakimi, Pacho, Hakan, Kvaratskhelia, Dembele, Captain, Thuram, Martinez, benches, Sommer, Doué, Barcola, and Vertesi. Yeah, you've got a 450-man squad. That's good. It's all about your starting 11, of course. Dembele, captain. Solid team overall. As I said in Spanish, though, if you are backing a PSG win, you might want to go for one extra player, and that could be Doué over Thuram, for example, but it all depends on your predictions. Easy says, I don't like, I'm guessing that is, how teams like United able to attract Cunha, or I don't know how, also potentially Mbeumo and Gyökeres. Well, United are still a massive club, but they've had a terrible season, of course. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of Arsenal signing Sesko. I'll talk more about that in future FPL videos and stuff. I think he's got a lot of potential, but I think he's quite raw. And if Arsenal want to win the league now, I don't really think Sesko is the answer. Not for this season anyway, but I'd happily be proven wrong about that. Petros says my rank is top 700. I'm going for something insane. That's the only way to do something. Keep playing the way you want to, and ultimately you want to enjoy the game, but all the best with that. Tarek says my current ranking is 400 in the world. What advice would you not give me? I'm guessing give me, and who is the best captain? Best captain on paper is Dembele from PSG and from Inter. Yeah, Lautaro is my favourite, followed up by Dumfries, but you've also got Hakimi, Nuno Mendes. They make up the top 5. Another option would be Calhanoglu, I think, maybe in the sort of that upper echelon of captaincy. But the wing-backs and Dembele, Lautaro, they're the standouts. In terms of the best advice is to keep on doing what you've been doing all season and don't suddenly change your approach. So if you've been quite conservative and now suddenly want to go, gung-ho, that could work, but I think it's best to keep playing the way you want to and kind of following what you've been doing all season if you are in such a good position. For those that are doing poorly or aren't happy with their rank, it might be a little bit different. DeMarco or Vitinha? That's a close one, to be fair. If DeMarco gets 60-plus minutes, I'd probably favour him over Vitinha, to be honest, but that isn't a guarantee. I think Vitinha is the safer pick. That doesn't mean the better one, but yeah, I'd lean towards Vitinha slightly more. If DeMarco was slightly more nailed on in terms of getting 60-plus minutes, he'd be the easy winner, but that isn't the case, unfortunately. Yeah, just covered that, Alexander. I mean, Vitinha had a horrible penalty against Arsenal, by the way, but Fabian Ruiz has 1% ownership. I think he's also more likely to score from open play, but they're both good options. There's not much in it. Sazad says almost everybody will have the same team. Well, that's why I've mentioned Fabian Ruiz as a differential. You could also go for a bench player like Vertesi, Barcola, Gonzalo Ramos, Taremi, Arnautovic. That is another differential play. Also, Pavard in that defensive line, I think, is quite underrated. So those are some differentials for you. Best differential captain, as covered earlier, Calhanoglu, or, to be fair, as a captaincy option, I think one of Kvaratskhelia or Doué could be a nice one from PSG. So I'm not against that. Best formation for today, I think, is either a back 4 or 5. So a 4-4-2 or a 5-3-2 is probably what I'd lean towards. No, it's not crazy to do a 4-5-1. I think that's a solid strategy. ¿Cuál sería tu 11? Sí, lo dije recién, Alejandro. Entonces, Sommer, si lo compro, lo voy a empezar sobre Donnarumma. 4 defensores, por lo menos. Hay una posibilidad que voy a ir por 5. Así que Dumfries, Nuno Mendes, Hakimi y Pacho. Kvaratskhelia, Dembele, Fabian Ruiz y Calhanoglu. Y Lautaro Martínez y creo que Thuram. Así que Saka, Doué y Di Marco estarían en el banco con Donnarumma, pero no está hecho en este momento. Hay una posibilidad que voy a hacer cambios. Martinez isn't on pens for Inter. He's second in command. Calhanoglu is the main penalty taker. Vitinha for PSG, yes, it seems correct. I think after Vitinha, you're looking at Dembele, if I'm not mistaken. Lucas says, if you're chasing rank, should I start 2 Inter forwards or 1 from each team? That's a difficult one to say. It does depend on your predictions, as I mentioned before. So if you are fancying PSG, I'd go for Doué. Otherwise, I think Thuram is a solid choice. But in terms of chasing, I mean, ownership-wise, Doué has 20% ownership. Thuram has a slightly lower. So maybe Thuram if you're chasing, but it's not a massive difference. They're both very similarly owned in the grand scheme of things. And some of these teams might be dead anyway. They're not actually active right now, so it doesn't make a big difference. Vitinha or Ruiz is close. Vitinha has penalties, more likely to get player of the match awards, but Ruiz is, in my opinion, the more probable to score from open play. And he's also got lower ownership, so there's pros and cons for both of them. I am leaning towards Fabian Ruiz at the moment, but it's not a guarantee. And there are a few things I need to iron out in the next 45 minutes. So that also answers Juan's question. Alejandro says 4-4-2 or 3-5-2. As mentioned before, 4-4-2 is my preference. Yeah, from those two, I prefer Fabian Ruiz. Barella's a quality player. I like him. But in UCL Fantasy, and maybe this ages horribly, but I do prefer Fabian Ruiz and the others. Champions League is coming to an end. Now it's time for Club World Cup Fantasy. Yeah, not just yet with Club World Cup Fantasy, but after today, the focus will shift towards that game instead. Start DeMarco or Vitinha. Yeah, I just covered that a few minutes ago, mate. The safer pick is Vitinha. Didn't know the Club World Cup will have a fantasy league. Yeah, it was released basically a week ago. I've got some notes and graphics already planned, so there could be a first draft video headed your way very soon. Richard Minichip says, Dylan, mate, why is Dembele your captain if your match prediction is 1-0 Inter? Yeah, like I said before, the prediction isn't fully locked in. I am tempted to change it to a 2-1 either way. I just think Inter Milan are a little bit more likely to win the game, but conversely, Inter Milan don't have as many good UCL fantasy options as PSG. But it's a decent question. I understand why you're saying it, but I'm also kind of hoping I get one right, either the prediction or the UCL fantasy team. But yeah, Dembele is my current captain. He's not locked in. I'm looking at Inter Milan, Dumfries, Calhanoglu and Lautaro. They're my favourites from that team to captain, but I'm not a big fan of them, I'll be honest, as a one-off captain compared to Dembele. Bruno Ribeiro says, hey Dylan, I need to choose between Bacho or Doué to start. I prefer Bacho at the moment. Sí, Rafael, recién respondí a esa pregunta en español y inglés, así que ojalá que lo escuchaste. Be Honourable says, hi Dylan, who is on pens for both sides. Vitinha for PSG and Calhanoglu for Inter Milan. I'd recommend buying at least one of them, and maybe both is the answer for a lot of people. Bastoni or Bacho? I'm leaning towards Bacho. Weiseng says it's a branger. John Walker also says, of the 3 strikers left in the game, who is the most benchable? Difficult to say. My favourite is Lautaro. Then it's a really close call between Thuram or Doué, which I haven't decided yet, but my feeling throughout the week has been going for Thuram. It's a really close call, though. Thank you, by the way, to those moderating the chat, like Twisted Parky, Keith, and all the other moderators. I appreciate it. All right, let's whiz through these because, yeah, and also for any questions I have answered already, I will be skipping them for the sake of repetition. Arsenal getting a Liverpool coach next season. Well, I saw that Man City are getting one. Yeah, Pep Linders, who was really highly rated, but actually wasn't aware about Arsenal. Maybe that was broken in the last hour or so. Barella or Vitinha, says Macdon. Vitinha. Liad says Bacho or Thuram. I prefer Bacho at the moment. Bruno says, hey Dylan, I need to choose between Bacho or Doué to start. Yeah, as covered before. Bacho. Barella's a decent option, mate, but not my favourite. Chris says, my rank is showing 25-304. I think in UCL Fantasy, if you got the same points, they basically just have you share the rank, basically. In FPL, it might be based on the amount of hits you've taken or transfers. But that's just... The rank I've got on screen is what I saw on the app and the website. Jorge Costa says, what do you think of Hakimi captain? He's right up there for me, Jorge. In my top 5 very easily, maybe even top 3. It really depends on your predictions, though, and I'm kind of conflicted about my scoreline. I went for 1-0 Inter, but that might change. Easy says in Club World Cup, will you transfer only players from Euro teams? No, not really, because there are some budget options. For example, from River Plate, which I'll talk about. And yeah, look, for example, there is a budget striker from Porto who is very underrated and criminally underpriced. But yeah, you've also got Messi as a premium option in the forward line. So I don't think so. You will have mainly European players or those in European teams, but you can still have some good options from South America, Africa, Asia, etc. So yeah, some questions have been repeated. Try not to repeat the same question, please. Yeah, that is true, Abdella. Vitinha has penalties, but did you see the one against Arsenal? It was pretty terrible. Neves instead of Vitinha or Ruiz. Well, Vitinha's on penalties, which has been talked about a lot by people. Ruiz has the slightly lower ownership, but yeah, if you are playing sort of conservative, the play is to go for Vitinha and go for Neves instead of Ruiz there. But if you're going kind of all out, you know, going for the jugular, I think going against Vitinha might be a decent play, actually. Lautaro or Thuram? Lautaro. I'm putting all my stocks in Hakimi today, says MMK. He has been very good recently. He scored in the Coupe de France final, scored in the semi-final against Arsenal in the Champions League, so it's a good option. Yeah, Petros, I covered your question earlier, or your message. Fabian or Vitinha? Yeah, for me, it's going to be a very close call. I'm leaning towards, I think Vitinha for those looking to preserve rank is probably the safer pick. Bacho or Pavard? Very close one. Very close. I like Bacho for the ball recoveries, and whilst Pavard is good in that metric, I do think Bacho kind of guarantees you a 3 or 4 pointer, irrespective of the final score. That's why I prefer him. The clean sheet odds also back PSG a little bit more, but I did go for 1-0 Inter Milan at the moment, and I might change it, but based on that prediction, it's really close. I'm going to say Bacho still, just because of the ball recoveries, but it's very, very close. FPL Gamic 31 was 14k. A guy in my mini league was about 20, 30 behind. I went really risky. They went template, finished 5k. I ended up 60k and got the exact same score as last season. Yeah, that's what I mean. Sometimes I'm not trying to discourage people from being different, by the way, because I do like when people go for something kind of left field at times. But yeah, there is that risk of going for something a little bit different and it just backfiring massively. It happened to me in FPL, unfortunately. I have this tendency of having things go wrong when I go for something a little bit adventurous. Sommer or Donnarumma? My preference is Sommer. Barella or Vitinha? Vitinha. At the moment, this could be the first season I have finished higher in Champions League than FPL. Well, hopefully that is the case, Twister Parky, and you can have a solid end to this season. Crown says go for Fabian or Neves. Yeah, from those two, it would be Fabian Ruiz, but I have mentioned before that I do like ball recoveries in Champions League finals, so Bacho, João Neves, Pavard, they're all solid choices. Thank you to Napstars for gifting 5 memberships, it's massively appreciated. So Yanis, Julian, JM Rock GT75, Miguel MJ, and FPL Rohits, enjoy the memberships and early access to my videos for an entire month. And a big up to Napstars as always. Richard says, I'm really struggling to pick 3 mids to transfer in. Already have Dembele and Hakan. Is it mad to go 5-2-3 with those 2 mids and bench my 3 new midfielders? I can chill over the 3 if I bench them. Yeah, look, the formation's very difficult to kind of finalize because it's really close. A lot of these decisions are 50-50 almost, and they can go either way. But my current preference is to go for 4 or 5 defenders, I think. I'm quite set on that. Then it just comes down to, do I go for the extra midfielder or forward? Is it going to be a 4-4-2, a 4-5-1, or do I go for 5-3-2, for example? But 4-4-2 does seem like the best overall and the most solid. Call me crazy, but I'm captaining Nuno, as Inter defend a lot of goals is mostly coming from crosses, so Nuno can do some decent crosses. Yeah, but the same goes for Hakimi, to be honest, and also Çalhanoğlu. Well, not Çalhanoğlu in this case, but yeah, I think those two from PSG are the best in terms of targeting that weakness from crosses, as you're talking about. That is a decent shout there. Even the ones from Barcelona, which didn't result in goals, I think Inter Milan did struggle with a lot of crosses by Yamal throughout the game, so that's not a bad shout. Dembele captain, kind of template, isn't it? But he is a solid choice for a reason. Gracias, Alejandro. So yeah, Martinez as a captain. He's my favourite from Inter Milan, from an attacking perspective. There's kind of like a tier list, I think. So I think in the upper echelons, you've got Dembele, Lautaro, Dumfries, Hakimi, and Nuno Mendes. They're kind of the standouts. Then in a tier below, you could say, you've got Çalhanoğlu, Vitinha, and these differential players. But yeah, I think Lautaro is right up there. 5-3-2 of which mids? Dembele, Çalhanoğlu, and probably Kvaratskhelia for me. Yeah, 3-5-2 is also viable. Not my favorite, I think, because I think you're missing out on a Baccio, Bastoni, maybe Pavard, and some solid ball recoveries and UCL fantasy defenders, but maybe you're backing a high-scoring game. So I think that's ultimately what should inform your final decisions with transfers, captaincy, and formation. Yeah, I'm considering other options than Dembele captain. He's not the only one I'm looking at. Like I just mentioned, there is Dumfries, Hakimi, Nuno Mendes, Lautaro, even Çalhanoğlu. They're all under consideration for me. Yeah, Mkhitaryan's a decent choice. Not my favorite, though, Andre. But, yeah, I think going for a second or third Inter Milan midfielder is a differential play. It's not locked in FPL sum. My current captain is Dembele. That might change. Pavard or Acerbi? Pavard. Kvaratskhelia or Vitinha? I prefer Kvaratskhelia. Sommer over Donnarumma is my preference, Justin. Pick one to start. It would be Mendes there. Or Lau, rather. Yeah, Nick, once again, Sommer is my preference in goal. Dumfries captain is one of the best. Just covered. Hakimi to captain. One of my favourites. Is he the best? That's tough to say. Amongst defenders, he's probably the best one on paper, I think. If you look at clean sheet odds, PSG are the narrow favourites as well. And Hakimi has so many routes to points. He scored in the Coupe de France final recently. I prefer Kvaratskhelia there, Mazin, once more. Top three into defenders. Dumfries, Bastoni, and Pavard in that order. So a lot of these have been covered already. Let's try to go for some different questions and messages. I wonder if it's better to go for players who get a lot of tackles and ball recoveries. Yeah, I think that's a sound strategy. There are different ways of playing it, even though you're quite limited compared to previous rounds. Ultimately, if you kind of decide on strategies like that, where you target ball recoveries, for example, that could be your differential play, so to speak, and a way of obtaining a green arrow. So I'm not against it. It's something I've talked about in my videos as well. So yeah, Andre, Mkhitaryan, good option. Not my favorite. I probably wouldn't buy him in the end. ¿Recomiendas a Hakimi de capitán? Sí, es mi favorito en términos de defensores, pero también está Dumfries y Nuno Mendes, y también depende de tu predicción. Y es difícil porque tienes a Çalhanoğlu, Lautaro Martínez y Dembele en otras posiciones. Which keeper are you choosing? Probably Sommer. If I buy Sommer, he's going to start. I am also considering a possibility where I avoid that transfer and buy another midfielder instead and maybe go for a different formation. But my plan throughout the week has been to buy Sommer and start him. Welcome, Bose. Hola, Dylan. How are you? My message just got away a little bit. Confused between Kvaratskhelia, Vitinha, and Barella. My favourite is Kvaratskhelia. Yeah, my favourite from those two would be Çalhanoğlu there over Doué. Any doubt over Lautaro's minutes? Well, he just came back, just like Pavard and Fratesi, so there is an element of risk there, but he is still my favourite forward in the game. Julian says, even though I think PSG might win, I think Lautaro is my favourite captain. Yeah, I'm kind of on the opposite side, so I think Inter might win, but I've gone for Dembele captain, so it's interesting how our kind of UCL fantasy predictions and also our picks are kind of conflicting a little bit. DeMarco low expected minutes, yeah, which is why I probably will bench him. Yeah, don't worry, Gary, I will be making transfers soon. I'm just kind of in two minds about certain decisions. I do think Matchday 17, oddly enough, can be the most difficult of any matchday. So there is the new feature of community leaderboard. So Easy, Banjo are basically joint top. You've got Richard. Also, is that SSE Drap and Twisted Parky in the top 5. So you can check the community leaderboard. There is a top 50 list. And of course, the messages do play a part. Don't spam, of course. That's not going to get you anywhere when it comes to the leaderboard in particular. Yeah, best back four. Yeah, for me, Dumfries, Hakimi, Nuno Mendes, and Baccio. Bastoni is very close to making that list, but that is my current preference. Napstars puts his team. Change the bench. So if you are backing PSG to win, I would go for Doué over Thuram, but that is entirely up to your prediction. I mean, I'm not sure who you're backing, but since both of them are starting, it's a very close call anyway. I like your starting 11 in general. I agree with benching Mkhitaryan. We'll see how that goes, but yeah, it's a very solid team, well thought out. But if you are fancying PSG to win, I'd go for Doué over Thuram. So yeah, that also covers Grigor's question. Ethan says Bastoni or Baccio. my current preference is Bacho. Yeah, I'm not sure Paredes. If you click the community one, you can find out. Wait, is it? To be fair, I think that is you in the top 5. I think you're 4th. But it comes up with your other name, I think, SSE Drap. But I think that's your profile picture. So, yeah, you are 4th in that list. I prefer Bastoni over DeMarco Badgeraz. Now, DeMarco has the highest ceiling, but he's also a riskier pick because of the minutes. Bastoni won't give you those sorts of issues, to be honest. Thank you, Geo Boys. Thanks for your work in the 2024-25 season. We go again tomorrow, registering the Club World Cup squad. Yeah, no breaks and no rest for the wicked, but I've made a team already. A first draft video is probably headed your way very soon. I've got some notes prepared for that, and also some graphics for other content, which you'll find out and see very soon. Thoughts on a 5-4-1? So I've been asked about every formation under the sun in this video, which is something I'm not really asked in other streams. It's a solid strategy. I prefer... To be honest, I do think a back 5 is really sound. I would actually prefer a 5-4-1 over most formations. Maybe the 4-4-2 is my favourite, but it is a very close call. And if you are going for a back 5, I would suggest Dumfries, Hakimi, Nuno Mendes, Bacho, and Bastoni. Now, you could also go for a sort of strategy where you go all in on PSG or Inter Milan, depending on your prediction, but those are my 5 favourite defenders in the game. So thank you to those that have liked the video. Let's get this to 200 likes. We're very close to reaching that number. And subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. I'll be locking in my team very soon. But I think what I'll do is at least make some transfers now and then lock in the final moves towards the end. Because I'm quite set on 1 or 2 transfers, like Kalinoglu, for example. I'm going to buy him in. But then it becomes a bit trickier with a few other options. Also, let me know your predictions for the final with Predict 6. I'll go through my individual predictions, I think, very soon. And hopefully my laptop or computer fixes itself up. It is bugging out a little bit, but yeah, let me... Jesus Christ, what is happening here? Okay, hopefully it's sorted now. Okay. But yeah, let me know if there are any issues. Hopefully that isn't the case. And yeah, with this one... Let's see... Yeah, that's going to look better now, isn't it? Yeah, that looks much better. All right, so... Let's make some transfers now. So the one transfer I'm quite set on is Kalinoglu. So I'm going to buy him in. So yeah, Kalinoglu in for Rafinha. Absolutely fine. Let's buy him. And then I can make my other 4 transfers very soon. So let's recover Ferran Torres. And let's lock this in nice and early. So Rafinha in for Kalinoglu. We've got a starting 11 now, if I'm not mistaken. So let's now go back to this section. And yeah, actually, we're 1 away from a starting 11. So at the moment, after buying Kalinoglu, I've actually got 5 Inter players. And also 5 from PSG. Very balanced. Donnarumma, Hakimi, Nuno Mendes, Dembele as my captain, and Doué. For Inter Milan, I've got DeMarco, Dumfries, Hakan Kalinoglu, Lautaro, and Thuram. So, slight edge towards PSG with the captaincy on Dembele, but essentially it's the same. I will be making 4 other transfers and then deciding on my final formation, which is the most important thing, I think, with Matchday 17. Yeah. I'll go back to your questions very shortly, trust me. Don't worry, but I just want to lock in my team, have a peace of mind, and not make last-minute decisions that end up costing me, which has been the case very often this season, especially in FPL. That's for sure. But let's see. Okay. Yeah. Okay, we're gonna go back to the transfer section very soon, but let me just play out the graphics whilst I answer some questions. You can check out my team selection video for detailed commentary and all of that, but yeah, I will be making some other transfers very, very soon. Hey Dylan, aside from Dembele, how would you rank the other PSG attackers? Probably Kvaratskhelia first, Doué second. Then you're looking at probably Vitinha. He's technically not an attacker, but he is on penalties. It's very close between him and Fabian Ruiz for that third spot, but Kvaratskhelia is my favourite. And would you start any other PSG mid over Doué? Potentially, yeah. I would potentially consider going for it. Yeah, one of those midfielders, Fabian Ruiz or Vitinha over Doué. That is one of my biggest dilemmas as well. Gonna have a French pastry with German gelato. Fair enough. Looks like you're backing a PSG win there in München. I understand you prefer Baccio, but thoughts on Acerbi as a differential? So, yeah, I think Acerbi is a nice option. He scored, of course, against Barcelona, but he's mainly there for the ball recoveries and the consistency there. No such concerns with minutes like you would get with DeMarco. But yeah, I think Acerbi's fine. As a differential, I'm not against it. Why Sommer over Donnarumma? More saves, also more UCL fantasy points, and I can cover PSG defensively with Nuno Mendes, Hakimi, and Baccio. Yeah, Francisco, my final team isn't locked in yet because I haven't decided. But what you're seeing on screen now is my most likely starting 11 and captaincy, but it's not locked in. Let us know regarding the upcoming Club World Cup fantasy. I have covered that a few times, Paredes. The plan is to make content, maybe not as much as I did for Euro fantasy last season, but if I'm able to get the time, I'll be making as many videos and live streams as possible. Depends, Zoramino. I think a back four is my preference. So that could be a 4-4-2, maybe even a back five. But yeah, 3-4-3 is fine. I just prefer a back four. Just wanted to thank you for all the content. Nice Champions League season. Good luck and see you in the Club World Cup. Thank you very much there. I think this will be a low-scoring points match. Well, it's a final. We typically get low-scoring games. So if we get more than 60 points, I might be slightly surprised, to be honest. But yeah. I actually think this is going to go extra time, 3-2 PSG, even though I want Inter to win. A lot of different predictions flying around. It's a very balanced final on paper. Napstar says, let's go. I'm chasing rank. Dumfries is my captain. Yeah, his overall ownership isn't differential, but captaining him will give you that sort of advantage. So I think that's a fairly decent strategy. I think Dumfries is up there. All right, Gary, don't worry. I will be locking in, but like I said, I'm actually thinking about my team, and it's not that easy because it's the final transfers of the season. I want to get it right. I've made one transfer already. Calhanoglu is locked in, but the others need to be defined. Rojas says, hola Dylan, estoy a 13 del líder en mi liga. ¿Qué diferenciales me aconsejas en el medio? Fabian Ruiz, Neves, Barella. Sí, en mi opinión, Fabian Ruiz es mi favorito. João Neves es una buena opción para recuperar el balón. Y para mí, Barella es un muy buen mediocampista, pero en UCL Fantasy creo que los otros dos son mejores. Mi favorito es Fabian Ruiz. Tengo los 5 defensas del PSG. ¿Y qué capitán crees que es el más diferencial? Bueno, más diferencial sería Vitinha o Fabian Ruiz en tu caso. No me molesta Dumfries o Nuno Mendes como capitán. Yo creo que Hakimi va a ser bastante popular después de Dembele y quizás Lautaro. Yo creo que Hakimi va a ser el tercer más popular con el capitán, si no el segundo más popular. Pero sí, si quieres ir un poquito diferente con el capitán, yo diría Dumfries o Nuno Mendes. Only 7 mids, or only 7 match days in Club World Cup. Yeah, just like Euros and World Cup. Nothing different, to be honest, from what I've covered before. Pens will be so good, says Kevy. It depends, though, because you also want some UCL fantasy points. And, yeah, we don't want to find a situation where it's like 1-1 and none of our players score or assist, and it's just like blank after blank. But from a non-fantasy perspective, I get your point. 2-2 and penalty, says Napstars. Fair enough. How's it going, bro? Thanks for all the help over the years. I have a feeling about Ruiz scoring tonight, but Inter winning. Yeah, I've got a good feeling about Ruiz, but I might end up not buying him. That's where it comes down to. A lot of overthinking, 50-50 calls, and it's going to be very close. Donnarumma or Sommer? As I've said all along, Sommer is my preference in isolation. Who's the most likely to play 120 minutes? It would be Calhanoglu. I think Lautaro could be benched or subbed off earlier because he has suffered a few injury problems recently. Just the Parky says, don't care who wins, probably prefer Inter. Palace and Chelsea already ruined the season for me. I'll be honest, I didn't really care about Chelsea winning it, and Palace, it was something a bit refreshing for me, but I understand why you didn't want to see it. I'm captaining Hakan, says Baraf. Fair enough. Mahir says, thank you for all the excellent content all season. Enjoy the final and your summer. Likewise, thank you very much. Best wildcard team has been covered many times. There is even a video on it, which I uploaded a few days ago. Just to go back one more time, this is the best team. So, yeah, essentially I go for something like this. There's still a few 50-50 calls, like Vitinha over Fabian Ruiz, if you just want to go a bit more template and cover a penalty taker from PSG. But, yeah, one of Vitinha or Fabian Ruiz is basically the only 50-50 call. The rest is quite locked in here. And I'd probably bench Donnarumma. Yeah, I think Barella will be on the bench. One of Doué or Thuram, depending on your final prediction of the game. So if you're back in PSG, start Doué. Defensively, I'd definitely go for a back four. And if that's the case, Bastoni will drop to the bench. But I don't even mind starting him. I think going for a back five is still a solid strategy. And a 5-4-1 is actually a popular strategy amongst some people watching. Thank you very much, Rojas. Some crack. I appreciate it. Yeah, John Carlos, yeah. Well, like I said, I'm not going to end that early. Vitinha or Fabian or Doué? Yeah, from those three, it's probably going to be Vitinha at the moment. Why did you take out Bastoni? I didn't take him out, mate. It's just... So what you see on screen here is the best team. People keep asking me who is the... what's the best 50-man squad on the wildcard or Limitless? That's what I'd probably go to. I don't have Bastoni myself. I've got DeMarco. I went for something a bit differential. It didn't really pay off in the end in Matchday 16. But, yeah. I'll probably go for Baccio if I buy a defender. Bastoni is next in line. Thuram or Bastoni? Slight preference for Bastoni. Last one, Fabian Ruiz as captain. It's a differential. It's a massive differential. 1% ownership right now. It'll probably go to 5% by the deadline. He's not my favourite captain, but out of the differentials and low-owned players, he's one of the better ones on paper. Thanks a bunch for the season. Lots of channels around, but this one is different. Cheers, mate. I appreciate it, and good luck for Matchday 17. Yeah, ready, team set, let's go. But good luck. No clean sheets, in my opinion. Definitely not doing a back five. Yeah, I get that. You can still get points, though, from ball recoveries, goals, assists. But if you're not backing a clean sheet either way, then you don't need to go for a back five for sure. Just the Parkeepers' team, solid stuff. I mean, I'm not a massive fan of Barella. I'm guessing he's on the bench. Yeah, he is on the bench. So that's fine. Doué over Thuram is a very close call. I haven't even decided that one yet, to be honest, and it does depend on your final prediction, but I have kind of preferred Thuram all week, so to speak, so I don't want to change that too much right now. I pretty much agree with your starting 11, but maybe I'd consider starting Baccio just for the ball recoveries, and you could drop either Vitinha or Bastoni to the bench. Bastoni set-piece score and Vitinha penalty in my prediction, says Baraf. We're getting a lot of different predictions, let me put it that way. Thank you, Godson, for moderating the chat as well. Diego Salas says, take out Doué and take in a midfielder who Vitinha. Halanoglu, if you don't have him, is my favourite. But, yeah, Vitinha's a penalty taker. He can get Player of the Match awards. You've also got Fabian Ruiz as a differential. Should I do Bastoni to Dumfries for a -4? Well, it is Dumfries. He could theoretically be worth a hit, to be honest, but I'm going to say no. Bastoni or Thuram or Baccio? Baccio. Martinez, my captain, but considering a defender. Well, defenders are very enticing. Hakimi, Nuno Mendes, and Dumfries. Lautaro is in my top 5 as well, though. It's a close one. I think captaincy is really, really close. And it could even be someone left field like Fabian Ruiz, who ends up being the highest scorer. But, yeah, I would prefer Lautaro slightly more than the defenders, I think. DeMarco not worth risking. I mean, it can work both ways. So maybe Inter concede after 60 minutes, but DeMarco is subbed off after banking in a clean sheet, 62-minute appearance, and that goes in your favour. But then conversely, it can go the other way around, and he doesn't get the appearance point and no clean sheet points as well. So it's a double-edged sword there. Yeah, bracket in Club World Cup Fantasy. I've actually done it. Yeah, no Predict 6 in the Club World Cup. It is a different entity after all. It's FIFA, not UEFA. Mina says, hey Dylan, I really want to start DeMarco over Bastoni, but as you mentioned, I'm really concerned about his minutes. Do you think he won't play at least 60 minutes in the UCL final? Well, we do have a very small sample size to judge that off, because a few years ago, Man City played Inter Milan in the Champions League final, and let's actually check, because I don't fully remember if DeMarco played 60 plus minutes or not. I don't think I even had him in my team, did I? So let me quickly check that. We can't base too much off that, circumstance, because that happened 2 years ago. But it is a small sample size. It gives you an impact, or an insight, should I say. Yeah, DeMarco didn't even start that game, did he? Neither did Dumfries. Wow, okay, that's maybe not great. Yeah, Carlos Augusto and Damian were the wing-backs on that particular occasion. Yeah, DeMarco was out. He didn't actually play. So yeah, that's you can't judge too much from that. Yeah, look, if I had to guess one way or the other, I think DeMarco gets 60 plus, but it's not a guarantee. And ultimately, you're going to get either, between 55 to 70 from him. I don't think you get any more. It can work in your favor, but it can also backfire massively. If you do start him, you're just going to have to hope for the best, really. I did say 1-0 Inter Milan throughout most of the week, Badgeraz, but it's a very iffy scoreline. I'm not fully set on it. Barella is starting. Yes, both lineups have been covered, so we might as well do that one more time, and then I'm going to lock in my team. So you can join my UCL Fantasy League. The code is cCaFxb. There is also that auto-join link. Check all the other links there, like the Discord server, my X, Instagram, and Blue Sky. Subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, so you never miss a single upload or live stream for both UCL Fantasy and FPL. So let's go through this. I did go for 1-0 Inter. I don't know how to feel about this, to be honest, but yeah, I do think PSG score. I am kind of getting that feeling the closer we get to the deadline. And whenever I change predictions, it ends up backfiring massively. But yeah, 2-1 either way. It's kind of generic, but yeah, we'll see how that goes. 0-0 at halftime. I might change that to 1-0 Inter. Lautaro to score first. A goal in the second half. No extra time. And of course, the booster is set on it. But yeah, I'm not really set on this. It is a close one. Let's also go through the predictions, or the polls. So Sommer versus Donnarumma. The community have spoken, and Sommer has 57% of the vote. Let's also refresh this one between Bastoni and Baccio. And Bastoni has won quite comfortably in the end. With this midfielder poll, Vitinha's first, Calhanoglu second, Ruiz third, and Barcola is fourth. And of course, the Frenchman isn't starting, so that doesn't bode well from a minutes perspective. And the last one is the captaincy. So let's refresh that. Dembele is still leading with even more votes now, 56%. Lautaro is second, Dumfries third, and Hakimi is fourth. Okay, I'm quite surprised by that, to be fair. I thought he'd be a little bit more popular than Dumfries, but there you go. Let's also refresh this a little bit. Yeah, so Vitinha's gone down a little bit, but essentially the same there as well. And of course, both lineups, there are still a few questions about who's starting or not. So PSG have gone for Donnarumma, Hakimi, Marquinhos, Baccio, Nuno Mendes, João Neves, Vitinha, Fabian Ruiz, Doué, Dembele, and Kvaratskhelia. And Inter going for Sommer, Bastoni, Acerbi, Pavard, DeMarco, Mkhitaryan, Calhanoglu, Barella, Dumfries, Lautaro, and Thuram. Both benches have also been highlighted. The main ones to look out for, if I can actually get this to work, would be Gonzalo Ramos, Barcola for sure. Maybe Zaire Emery, who has had a poor season by his standards. For Inter Milan, for Tessie, want to keep an eye on. One of their strikers like Arnautovic in potentially his last ever game for Inter Milan. To Remy. I think Carlos Augusto as a wing-back could also make an impact, but yeah, we can always get these surprises like Zielinski, for example. But yeah, all of that has been addressed in this video. My favourite options from both teams. So for PSG, if I had to narrow down to 3 players, Dembele, Hakimi, and Nuno Mendes. And for Inter Milan, you're looking at Lautaro Martinez, Dumfries, and Calhanoglu. Out of both goalkeepers, they're both very solid. Not much in it, but Sommer is a slight preference of mine. I've actually kind of flopped recently with goalkeepers in terms of, selling Raya to Courtois, and then Arsenal keep the clean sheet. And then what else did I do? I sold Raya to Donnarumma in the last match day, and Raya saved the penalty. But yeah, I also had some good ones, like picking Alisson when he got player of the match against PSG. So it is a double-edged sword there as well. Let's lock in my final team, though. I definitely wouldn't advise to copy. Go for your own thing because we are in the final match day. We're all going to have very similar teams. Let's try to go for something a little bit different. So this is what I think is the best team, and it's either Vitinha or Fabian Ruiz for that final midfielder slot. Really, really close one. Vitinha is the kind of safer pick, so to speak, on penalties as well. But in terms of my team, I've bought Calhanoglu in already for Rafinha. I'm going to sell Yamal and Ferran Torres. I'll probably buy Baccio or Bastoni here. And that's what it all comes down to. Okay, so with just 10 minutes to go, I'm going to try and lock this in the next 5 minutes and then answer any last questions. But to be honest, the vast majority has been covered already. Team-specific situations and also a few other things there as well. Captaincy, differentials, formation has been a really popular question as well. So the goalkeeper one does seem a bit strange to me because I could see that backfiring either way. Not going for Sommer, and if I do buy him, I think Donnarumma is still a solid choice. Not much in it. So I think I'll buy Sommer and start him. Defensively, it's a close one. So Baccio. Then I would say Kvaratskhelia, and then it comes down to this. Fabian Ruiz, Vitinha, João Neves, all under consideration. I think Vitinha is going to be the one. Kind of template. I've got 8.6 million in the bank. I'm not going to take a hit. I don't advise people to take hits. You only need a starting 11. No subs, no change in captaincy. So, yeah, I'm pretty sure everyone, or almost everyone, can get to a starting 11 this week. And that's all that's important there. So, yeah, Vitinha, Kvaratskhelia, Baccio and Sommer are the most likely transfers. Fabian Ruiz, Bastoni, they're still under consideration. I could even just start Donnarumma and avoid Sommer, basically. FPL Rohit says, hey, Dylan, favouring a 5-4-1. Who would you recommend as a forward? Lautaro Martinez for me. Highest chance of scoring. He's also maybe a little bit of a minute's risk, to be fair, but he has played in the Champions League final before, and he's a talismanic figure for Inter Milan. Thanks for the amazing content. Really admire the detailing in each video and how humble you are, mate. Good luck. I appreciate the kind words, FPL Rohits. Enjoy the membership, all courtesy of FPL Napstars. And a big up to everyone in the chat as well. Nicely done, easy. I'll be honest, with FPL, I haven't even checked my rank or how I did, but I'm fairly sure it was pretty terrible in the end, and I'm happy to have disconnected from that. So I did say 1-0 Inter Milan, Twisted Parky. I'm not locked in on it, though. And I said no extra time, but we'll wait and see. Yeah, no, I did, I think, change it, Alex. I mean, look, maybe Inter do keep a clean sheet. A lot of recent finals have been 1-0 or low scoring, so it's not completely out of the question. But the more I think about it, I think both teams will score. Thank you, DG. Good luck, everyone. I've gone all out on PSG, hoping for more goals than in the last few finals. Thanks for all your hard work this season, Dylan. Thank you very much. And yeah, I think that is... a lot of people have that same opinion of a high-scoring final or, you know, PSG getting the win. So, Kvaratskhelia, Vitinha, Baccio and Sommer. So if I were to do this, as covered in my team selection video, it would be Sommer in goal. A back four, I think. So Hakimi, Dumfries and Nuno definitely start, and then it's probably Baccio as my final defender. And then in the midfield, Calhanoglu, Kvaratskhelia, Dumfries, Vitinha. And I'll be honest, since I'm kind of going a little bit more towards PSG here, I might start Doué over Thuram as well. All of these can backfire, but they can also go well. There is an element of risk with every decision you make, but let's not overthink. Let's get this locked in. You can see here my other 4 transfers. So after selling Rafinha to Calhanoglu, I'd be removing Yamal, Szczesny, Ferran Torres, and Saliba to Kvaratskhelia, Sommer, Vitinha, and Baccio. So we've got 5 minutes left. And I'll be locking in any second now. Out of those two, I would probably favour Doué, to be honest. I mean, I'm looking to... I don't have Bastoni in my own team, to be honest, and I do favour him more than DeMarco, but yeah, I think Doué. And Maddie says leaning on Inter. That's fair enough. I think most people would go for PSG, but there are a few like you and maybe myself who have said Inter, even though our UCL fantasy decisions might not reflect that. I am glad FPL is over. Same here to Stepaki. Haaland can get lost. Yeah, he has been very disappointing, to be fair. Thank you, Guru. I appreciate it. And also to Napstars, good luck to all. Hope to see you, Dylan, for Club World Cup fantasy content. The only person who will be able to pronounce names. Wow, bit harsh, but I appreciate it. I do get a lot of complaints sometimes about certain names, but I do research it. Maybe I still butcher it, but I try my best. Thank you to Chicken Connoisseur's dad as well. Big up to you as well. Yeah, hopefully we get a good final as well. Messi will be in a lot of Club World Cup fantasy managers' teams, playing home soil with the help of FIFA. I disagree, to be honest, and Inter Miami have been poor. They are struggling in the American League, in the MLS, and Messi's been doing well, but yeah, Mascherano is not a great coach. But anyway, let's log this in. I think I'm going to basically go for the PSG side of it. Like, I'm quite set, to be honest, on the PSG mids, you know, Kvaratskhelia and Vitinha. But then when it comes down to something as simple as buying Sommer or just keeping Donnarumma, I'm kind of in two minds about that. And also Baccio Bastoni. It's not as easy as it looks, but I think I'm going to make a decision here. Yeah. Baccio and Bastoni is probably my biggest dilemma, actually. I'm kind of in two minds about that one. Thank you, Napstars, as he says, like, subscribe, and share the video. It is greatly appreciated. I'm going to confirm this, I think. But there's something about Bastoni. I don't know why. But there we go. Let's go all in on PSG, so to speak. And there we go. We're locked in, technically. Let's just make the substitutions and the captaincy. That is all that's left now to decide. So Sommer in goal. I would be such a tit if I still started Donnarumma in the end, but yeah. I would go for this, and I think I'm going to go for a 4-4-2. So, yeah, with this formation, I would have 7 PSG players and 4 Inter. Quite interesting, to be fair. I could balance that out a little bit more by going for Thuram over Baccio, but let's confirm this for now. Yeah, honestly, anything could go either way, so it's best not to overthink it too much. Yeah, at the moment, like I said, mate, Lewis, I did highlight your question. I am favouring Doué, but it's very close. Dumfries captain again, says Bran. Interesting. Yeah, a lot of good captaincy options flying around, but no standouts, in my opinion. Thank you, JibX34. Enjoy the last UCL Fantasy Deadline as well. Godsent says, all the best, everyone. Hope I'm a double champion by the end of today. All the best there, Godsent. We are looking to win our mini leagues there. Let's actually check my predictions as well. So, yeah, 2-1 Inter is what I've gone for. Inter to score first. 1-0 Inter at half-time. Lautaro to get the opening goal. Also for a goal to be scored in the second half. And no extra time I've put, but that could age horribly. So all the polls have been covered as well. Sommer is the winner in the goalkeeper position. Bastoni over Baccio, but I've bought the Ecuadorian. Vitinha as the best midfielder. I've bought him and Calhanoglu in the end. And Dembele as the best captain. He is currently the one with the armband for me, but that could be another late change in my UCL fantasy team. So this was how I looked like before making any transfer. I had 6 eliminated players, but with 5 free transfers, I've been able to get to a 14-man squad. So this is my final team. Now, let's just lock in the starting 11. Sommer, Donnarumma. Yeah, I'm still leaning towards Sommer a little bit more. And yeah, Baccio for the ball recoveries, the other 3 for attack and potential there in that defensive line. The midfield, you've got 2 penalty takers in Vitinha and Calhanoglu. You've got Dembele for the goal contributions. Kvaratskhelia as the attacking winger there, who can also get goals from open play. And I've gone for Lautaro and Doué, which might be a slightly differential play. I was on Thuram all week over Douay, but I have changed that a little bit. We'll see how that goes. Like this video, even if you're on your way out. We are close to 200, and hopefully I've answered your question and also helped you throughout the season with your captaincy, differentials, transfers, you name it. I appreciate those that have tuned into every single video and live stream for UCL Fantasy and FPL. King Shah says Hakimi captain, and we are very close now, just seconds away from the deadline. That's a good option. Douay or Vitinha? I'm gonna say Vitinha. Not by much though. It is a very close one. So yeah. Dembele captain does seem a bit, I don't know, it just seems very template, but there you go. King Shah says Kvaratskhelia captain. All the best there. Thanks for all the content, Dylan. Good luck all. Likewise, Michael Blackburn. And yes, the Champions League final has started. Kvaratskhelia captain could be a alternate differential. Maybe. There's a lot of differentials flying around. Saludos desde Bolivia. Gracias por todo, Dylan. Hasta la próxima temporada. Gracias, Rolando. Y buena suerte en la jornada 17. No clean sheet, but Donnarumma masterclass. Hopefully not. But I wouldn't be surprised with my recent goalkeeper transfers. You think two teams score and put 4 defenders? I covered that before, mate, because there is the possibility of ball recoveries and also attacking potential. But we'll see how that goes. My original prediction was 1-0 Inter. So if that happens, maybe I'll regret not starting more Inter defenders instead. So it goes both ways. Thank you, Ice Cold Murderer. Thank you, Dylan. Goated work. Very kind of you. Twisted Parky says, okay, so we have summer. Think a player called Dennis Winter. Matthew Spring. Have we had an autumn? Wow, that's a very good point. I actually never thought of that. Manit says, thanks, Dylan, bro. Thank you for watching. Changed to Hakan captain last minute. I won't lie. Actually, it crossed my mind when considering other captaincy options. What do you want FPL to add and remove next season? I'll cover this more so in future FPL videos and stuff. But yeah, I would like ball recoveries or a system where defensive actions are given, you know, a bit of a reward. And yeah, also new chips, even the Limitless. It might be copying from UCL Fantasy and Euros, but it is a good booster. Richard Millerchip says, thanks for all your help this season for FPL and UCL Fantasy. You're the best content creator and definitely the most engaged during live streams. All your hard work is very much appreciated, mate. Thank you, Richard. Very kind of you, and I hope you do well and enjoy the final and also your UCL Fantasy performance. Let's see how we do. Bada says, I back PSG this game for Hakimi. As a Moroccan, I also captain him. Not surprised by that. Final score 2-0 PSG. Yeah, we'll see how that goes. I went for 2-1 Inter. Yeah, I'm kind of hoping it goes well, but let's see. Let's see what bloody happens. Wait, what? How does that work? Surely that's a bug. Oh. All right, okay. That's interesting. But yeah, drop a like on your way out. I am going to head off to watch the final now. And yes, enjoy the Champions League final there. Zazad says, I see you chose summer, so I go for Donnarumma. Thank you very much. Moita says, thank you, Dylan. See you in the Club World Cup. Love from India. Yeah, hopefully the times are a bit better for you. The first deadline will be at 12 AM on a Sunday, actually, in the UK. So maybe that's more accessible to you and those in Asia. Twisted Parky says, I think I remember Spring because I had for LMA Manager. I had the 05 game. I wasn't a big fan of it, but yeah, good music, I guess. Good soundtrack, a few decent things about the game. Thank you, Ashraful, and good luck. Yeah, new chips would be a great addition. When we're done for his captain in the end, hoping for a repeat of his semi-final heroics. Yeah, good shout. Good shout. Goem says Lautaro captain can fail, but would like to have fun as a neutral gunner. I like Lautaro as an Argentine. Obviously, he was a hero in the Copa America last year, but yeah, I'm technically a neutral. If I had a slight preference, it might be Inter Milan. Yep, final started. Who cares? Fantasy done. Just kidding. No, I don't really blame you, Twisted Parky, for even thinking it or joking about it. Good luck, Gary. I appreciate you reminding me to make or lock in my team constantly. I need to do that more often. Twisted Parky says, what's a bug? Missed that. I'm not sure what that's in reference to because I probably said that a few minutes ago, but yeah. Oh, it was a bug that I was experiencing in the Predict that I thought in terms of the points. But yeah, I'm trying to win that mini league as well. John says, Dylan, thank you for the fun. See you soon, hopefully. Please like. Thank you very much, John. As he says, like the video, subscribe, hit the notification bell and all that good stuff, and keep your eyes peeled for more content for the Club World Cup and also for FPL when that's released. Joe says, thanks for all the content this season. Enjoy the summer, mate. Thank you very much. I'll see you very soon. Bader says, do you think it's the first game between the two teams ever? Yes, it is, in a competitive sense anyway. They have played in friendlies, but that doesn't really count. Not in club football. Whereas the Club World Cup Fantasy League, well, I actually posted about it on my channel. So just go on the posts and you'll find it very easily. If you join my Discord as well, there is a channel for that, for the Club World Cup. And I also posted the link and also the code. I hope FPL add vice captain, triple captain. I'm not sure about that. But even the change of captaincy, you know, that would be maybe a welcome addition. Not for everyone. I don't see FPL doing it. But ball recoveries, defensive actions, new chips would definitely go a long way. Club World Cup time is for us in South Asia. Matches in the early morning. Oh, I get that. Yeah. I mean, you're technically awake for it, but you're probably off to work or doing stuff there. But it is a Sunday for the Matchday 1 anyway. Yes, Club World Cup Fantasy is quite similar to the World Cup and Euros, but there are some changes, which I'll cover very soon. I used to like Jean-Pierre Papin. Yeah, I remember the way Clive Tilsley used to say that. GoM says, please like and subscribe, at least on behalf of Dylan. I can't say it. I can say it. Thank you very much. Thank you, GoM. And a big up to all of you who have been watching. Enjoy the final now. See you very soon as well, Sazad, and everyone else watching. If you haven't already, you know what to do. All that good stuff in the algorithm to boost us up. I'll be watching the final in a pub any second now. I need to rush over there, otherwise my friends are going to kill me if they haven't done so already. But you can find my platforms there, my social media links, Instagram, X, Blue Sky. You can find me by typing FPL Dylan or Dylan RCM. There's my Discord server, UCL Fantasy League, and Spotify. And I'll see you very soon for the Club World Cup Fantasy content, as I mentioned before. FPL and UCL Fantasy will return next season. That's the plan. You might even see new content at some stage, like gaming and stuff like that. We'll wait and see. But until then, enjoy the Champions League final. Let's get a green arrow and round off this season as strongly as possible. And keep your eyes peeled for the new content.